Chapter 3192. Heavenly Courts. The great battle between the 11 great emperors had caused the heavenly court to be in shambles and desolated. In hell, Shura, the ghost race, and the heavenly court's army, it no longer looked like a paradise. Everywhere one looked, there were corpses and rivers of blood. The battle between the great emperors in the heavenly courts was even more intense than in the middle world. The 6 lords of the heavenly courts came from the greater world and had many trump cards. Being in the heavenly courts, they could unleash their combat strength to the maximum. Even though Wu Dao's true body was powerful and had the upper hand, the Lord of Firmament and Lord of Black Heaven were forced to retreat, but the 2 of them were still able to hold on. Both sides were exhausted. Wu Dao's true body had appeared very early to fight the heavenly court's army and a few inspector heavenly ambassadors. Then, he fought the Lord of White Heaven and the Lord of Hell. After the battle in the middle world, he fought the 2 lords of the heavenly courts in the heavenly courts. After continuous battles, even he could not hold on any longer. Wu Dao's true body could vaguely sense that the 6 lords of the heavenly courts were not only able to unleash their combat strength to the maximum, but they also seemed to have an endless supply of energy. If not, the Lord of Firmament and Lord of Black Heaven would not have lasted until now. After all, the heavenly courts were augmented by the Dao seals of the 9 lords of the heavenly courts. As long as the Dao seals were not destroyed, the lords of the heavenly courts would have a huge advantage in the battlefield. The martial Dao body's heart stirred and a bold idea suddenly flashed through his mind. With his current strength, even if the 2 worlds resonated and released 9 flames, he would not be able to destroy the 9 Dao seals in the heavenly courts. It could only be achieved with the help of other forces. With that thought, Wu Dao's true body no longer hesitated. Apart from the Avicii Hell, the remaining 9 gates of hell opened. Whoosh! The sound of water flowing could be heard from the 9 huge gates. In the next moment, Hell's Spring, Hell's Acheron, Hell's Cold Spring, Hell's Spring, Hell's Serene Spring, Hell's Subterranean Spring, Hell's Bitter Spring, and Hell's Water Spring. Almost at the same time, the 9 Hell Springs descended. On the other side, Daiyu saw this scene and flapped her wings, creating a blood-colored storm that landed on the 9 Hell Spring. Storms swept the 9 Hell Springs and Hell, rising into the sky. After call the wind, it was call the rain. Violent winds and torrential rain. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The 9 Hell's spring water turned into a torrential downpour that covered the 9 heavens. This was the joint attack of Wu Dao's true body and Daiyu. It had indeed dealt great damage to the heaven court. The first to suffer was the heaven court's army. Many of the immortal palaces in the heavenly court could not withstand the scouring of the 9 springs of hell. Many immortal herbs and spirit plants withered. However, the 6 lords of the celestial court seemed unaffected by the downpour of the 9 springs. Ha 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 ha. The Master of Heavens seemed to have seen through the intention of Wu Dao's original body. He laughed and said, "Araki Takashi, you want to destroy the Taoist seal that we left in the heavenly court with the help of the 9 springs of hell? You must be dreaming." Really? Wu Dao's main body didn't explain. He just replied indifferently. The 9 springs of hell possessed all sorts of mystical powers that could even affect imperial emperors. However, Wu Dao's main body had already predicted that the 9 springs of hell might not have any effect on imperial emperors. Through the 9 gates of hell, what he wanted to attract was not the 9 springs of hell, but the source of the 9 springs of hell, the river Styx. He wanted to flood the heavenly court and use the river Styx's power to destroy the Taoist seal of the 9 lords of the heavenly court. Rumble, 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 rumble. The 6 lords of the heavenly court felt the aura coming from the 9 gates of hell. Their faces changed drastically. What kind of power is this? Before the 6 lords of the heavenly court could figure it out, the dark and mysterious river Styx's water turned into a destructive torrent that poured into the heavenly court. The vast heavenly court was quickly submerged by the river Styx. The power of the 9 Taoist seals that were left in the heavenly court was obviously weakening. Even Wu Dao's main body didn't know where the river Styx came from and how it was formed. However, He had once drifted with the river Styx for 100 years and could sense the immense power contained within the river. Right now, the essence spirit of Wu Dao's main body couldn't withstand drawing the river Styx out of hell and flowing towards the heavenly courts through the 9 gates of hell. He had expended too much energy in the consecutive battles. Now that the water of the river Styx was drawn over, his essence spirit was extremely weak. The river Styx was so strong that even the 9 gates of hell could not withstand it. As the river Styx surged continuously, coupled with the fact that the essence spirit of Wu Dao's main body was getting weaker, the edges of the 9 gates of hell were filled with cracks. Not long after, it shattered with a loud bang. Although the 9 gates of hell collapsed, Wu Dao's main body had already achieved his goal. The 9 heavens were already drowned by the river Styx. The power of the 6 lords of the heavenly courts was gradually weakening. Although the reduction was not obvious, even the slightest change would have a huge impact on the situation. Bang, bang, bang. Up till this point of the battle, both sides were almost at their limits. Their essence spirits were weak and the worlds were extremely fragile under the constant collisions. They collapsed one after another and turned into nothingness. Even martial forging universe could not withstand it and turned into fragments. The resonance of the two worlds could indeed raise the combat strength of Wu Dao's main body to the limits and even surpass the restrictions of the heavenly Dao's rules on the dimensional world. However, after the continuous battles, the consumption was immense and martial forging universe could not withstand it. After it shattered, the state of the two worlds fusing was naturally dispelled. Without the gates of hell and martial forging universe, Wu Dao's main body could not even release the simplest mystic skills. Daiyu, the Fiend Master, the Evil Emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother were in a similar state. The Dao seals were constantly washed away by the water of the river Styx and dimmed. The 6 lords of the heavenly courts were also at the end of their rope. At this point of the battle, the 11 Thearchs had even begun fighting in melee. There were no earth-shattering scenes. Instead, they were punches and claws that tore at each other. Bones were broken and flesh was splattered everywhere. It was extremely tragic. Both sides were determined, and their Dao hearts were unshakable. The 6 lords of the heavenly courts would not retreat and let Wu Dao's main body and the others pass. As for Wu Dao's main body, Daiyu, and the Demon Master, the 5 of them would also destroy the heavenly courts in this generation. Both sides relied on the strong will in their hearts and continued to fight. Wu Dao's main body did not have many trump cards, but his physical body was the Yuan Wu world. Even if he could not support a world, with this body of Wu Dao's main body could still sweep through everything and suppress strong enemies. Both sides were forced to their limits. In the end, Wu Dao's main body won. The martial Dao body raised both of his fists. They were like a pair of mountains that weighed more than 10,000 caddies as they smashed down continuously. Countless scales fell off the Lord of Firmament's body. His skin was lacerated and his flesh was mangled. The Lord of Black Heaven hid his entire body in a thick tortoise shell. It looked like there were fewer external injuries. However, the shocking divine power that came from Wu Dao's main body's fists could even penetrate his tortoise shell. His internal organs were damaged and his bones were cracking. His teeth were loose and his mouth was full of blood. If this continued, he would probably be killed by Wu Dao's main body through the thick tortoise shell. Chapter 3193. The battlefield in the middle world was also extremely tragic. Many corpses floated in the starry sky, and the smell of blood soared into the sky. Fresh blood, severed limbs, and broken arms could be seen everywhere. Su Zimo relied on many movement techniques and escape techniques. Young Master Xin Tian alone could not catch up to him at all, and he escaped time and time again. In his rage, the Lord of Xin Tian commanded more than 50 imperial emperors to surround and kill Su Zimo. Among the 50 imperial emperors, there were 10 peak imperial emperors, and the rest were peerless imperial emperors. Originally, there were some ordinary imperial emperors who were eager to take this opportunity to contribute. However, not only did they fail to make any contributions, they were even killed by Su Zimo in the chaos. After Su Zimo killed several ordinary imperial emperors, The imperial emperors of the heavenly courts realized that ordinary imperial emperors were not enough in front of this peak immortal king. As time passed, the current situation developed. More than 50 imperial emperors, including the Lord of Xiantian, were constantly chasing after Su Zimo, suppressing his escape space. Holding back more than 50 imperial emperors by himself was already the limit of what Su Zimo could do. Even other peak imperial emperors would not be able to do this. Even so, the situation in the Sword Realm and Heaven Wasteland domain was still not optimistic. After all, the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. Even if Su Zimo held back more than 50 imperial emperors, it only eased the situation slightly. It was like trying to put out a burning cart with a cup of water. Su Zimo's condition was getting worse and worse. Under the pursuit of the Lord of Xiantian and the others, he could still take advantage of the chaos to kill a few ordinary imperial emperors. It was impossible for him to escape unscathed. If not for the terrifying self-healing ability of Qinglian, who was a 12th grade creation, and her powerful vitality, he would not dare to take this risk. Even so, he was still heavily injured. His body staggered, and his speed was not as fast as before. Even with the powerful healing ability of Qinglian's true body, it was difficult to recover in a short time. What was worse was that under the command of the mysterious Heaven Master, all his escape routes had been blocked. Under the lead of 10 peak imperial emperors, more than 50 imperial emperors sealed off the surroundings and started to compress space. It wouldn't be long before they trapped him in a dead end. You ants from the medium-class world, you can't even withstand a single blow. Do you think a bunch of ants like you can defy the will of heaven? On the Sword World battlefield, the mysterious Heavenly Inspector, Heavenly Ambassador roared with laughter. Without Araki Takashi and Shuedai, there are no more heroes in the medium-class realm. The profound Sky Inspector, Heavenly Ambassador rampaged through the Sword World's battlefield, unleashing a massacre that no one was his match. Under his slaughter, the Sword Realm had already begun to show signs of collapse. Right at this moment, an enormous energy fluctuation suddenly came from the battlefield. Even Su Zimo subconsciously glanced over and couldn't help but tremble. 2 peak imperial lords from Sword World stood forward and blocked the mysterious Heavenly Inspector, Heavenly Ambassador's path. These two were the fat and thin elders of the Sword World. They were also the 2 realm lords of the Sword World. They conjured hand seals and self-detonated their swords, detonating a sword chi world. They condensed the final sword of their lives and slashed at the mysterious Heavenly Inspector, Heavenly Ambassador. The 2 elders of the Sword World used the most tragic method to respond to the mysterious Heavenly Inspector, Heavenly Ambassador. Su Zimo had once cultivated in the Sword World for a period of time and knew that this was a mystic technique of the Absolute Sword Tao. Sword of Despair. Once this sword was used, it would end one's life. The final part of the Sword of Despair was to sever one's cultivation path with a single strike. This mystic technique was something that even the sword cultivators of Absolute Sword Peak had never cultivated. Many sword cultivators would joke while chatting, saying that the sword cultivator senior who created this mystic technique was truly bored. Who would cultivate in such a sword Tao mystic technique that ended one's life? Even the sword cultivators of the Sword World had never seen this sword Tao mystic technique before. And now, it wasn't just the sword cultivators. All the experts that were paying attention to this battle, as well as the myriad races, saw this extremely stunning sword strike that was like a moth flying into a flame. The duo's sword Tao had been sublimated to an extreme at that moment. For some reason, the sword cultivators who saw this scene were tearing up. It was the same for the elder with the iron crown. Even he did not know that his 2 old friends had secretly cultivated this sword Tao mystic technique behind his back. Perhaps they had long been prepared for this. Our lifespans are coming to an end. This strike will be the final mark we leave behind in this world. The fat elder said with a smile. The thin elder, who always wore a stoic expression, revealed a slightly stiff but extremely carefree smile at the final moment. Following that, the duo's figures were drowned in endless sword chi. Of course, saying that their lifespans were coming to an end was only an excuse. If they had succeeded in their assault on the heavens in this life, the two elders could have ascended to a high thousand world. With their cultivation improved, they could naturally extend their lifespans. But at the sword world's most critical juncture, the two elders gave up this opportunity. They ignited their lives to defend the sword Tao in their hearts. They would rather break than bend and press forward with indomitable will. Even if the Middle Thousand World did not have Araki Takashi or Shuedai, it still had them. At that moment, the figures of the two elders attracted everyone's attention. It was also deeply engraved in the hearts of many experts. Even the experts from the Heavenly Eye race and the Golden Crow race that had just attacked the Sword World subconsciously lowered their heads at that moment. They had to admit that they were inferior to the two elders from the Sword World. Faced with such a sublimated strike, the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador also felt immense pressure. He could not help but roar as his eyes widened. He immediately transformed into his true body and curled his body into a tortoise shell. At the same time, he propped up a world and used his bloodline phenomenon. He released many trump cards to establish defensive barriers around him. The two elders' strike that ignited their lives made him sense the aura of death. He felt immense danger. Pwa, pwa, pwa. The barriers were penetrated one by the two long swords. These barriers were also constantly weakening the sword of desperation of the fat and thin old men. Boom. There was a loud boom. The two desperate strikes finally struck the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's world, producing a loud boom. The entire world was shaking violently. Ka. Immediately following that, fine cracks appeared in the world as they rapidly spread. All the experts were astounded. The two strikes had shattered the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's world. After all, the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador had relied on his body and bloodline to sweep through the crowd of Empyrean lords. No one could withstand his might. But now, the destruction of the world meant that the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador had lost his most powerful means. It was equivalent to severing an arm. As for the two desperate strikes, they dissipated after shattering the world. All that was left was wisps of sword chi that landed on the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's tortoiseshell. There was a metallic sound before they dissipated. It was over. The mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador had managed to withstand the strikes of two peaked sword thearchs that ignited their lives. However, he had paid a huge price. Die! The iron-crowned elder was enraged as he roared. He propped up a world as sword chi surged forward. He moved with his sword as he charged at the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. The other Empyrean lords of the sword world also attacked. They wanted to take this opportunity to kill the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. Only by doing so would the two elders' sacrifice not be in vain. Chapter 3194. Faced with the encirclement of the Sword Realm Emperors, the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador moved. The massive and thick tortoiseshell constantly spun in midair. The lifeblood in his body surged as massive waves surged beneath him. The ravines on the tortoiseshell emitted a resplendent divine light. Clang, clang, clang. Numerous swords struck the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's tortoiseshell, producing a series of ear-piercing sounds. Not only did the divine weapons in the hands of these sword emperors fail to penetrate the tortoiseshell, they were even sent flying. Some of the sword emperors' palms were torn apart as they bled profusely. Some of the swords were even shattered on the spot. Many of the fragments flew out and entered the body of an emperor of the sword realm. This sword emperor died on the spot. The sword realm had lost another emperor. Even the iron-crowned elder's world was unable to break through the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's defenses. After all, he was a sacred beast of the Black Tortoise race. He had peerless defenses and was also an Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. Even without a world, he remained unshakable on the astral battlefield. When everyone saw this scene, despair surged in their hearts. If they could not kill the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador or break through his defenses, who in the Middle Thousand Realms could fight him? The Sword Realm Emperors were filled with grief, indignation, and indignation. The fat and thin Sword Realm lords had ignited their lives to break through the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's world, creating a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yet, they were still no match for him. Ha 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 ha. You bunch of ants dare to take my life? The mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's laughter came from the massive tortoiseshell. It hummed and revealed endless mockery. I'll stand here and let you attack. Who can kill me? I'll kill you. Just as the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador said that, a loud roar came from afar. When the first word was said, the voice sounded above the Heaven Wasteland domain. When the last word was said, the person had already arrived on the battlefield of the Sword Realm. This figure attracted everyone's attention. It was an old ape. He was many times taller than Mount Meru in the heavenly realm. His head was the firmament, and his feet were the stars. His massive body nearly burst through the world. No one could ignore this figure. Even the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Emissary's expression changed. The fur on the old ape's body had long since turned white, and he seemed to be on the verge of death. However, his eyes surged with a horrifying bloody glow, and his battle intent surged into the sky. He was unparalleled. The old ape looked even older. His lifespan was exhausted in an instant. But at that instant, Elder Ape's combat strength skyrocketed, reaching an untouchable level. With a single step, he traversed billions of kilometers of space and descended on the Sword World battlefield. He raised his staff and smashed it at the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. This scene was destined to be eternally remembered. When Suzimo and Monkey sensed the changes in the old ape, they instantly understood something. Back then, the two of them had received the inheritance of the great battle emperor on the path to heaven. The battle catalog had a total of 5 levels, and the last level was called Battle Against the 9 Heavens. However, at that time, when the two of them entered the inheritance of the battle against the 9 Heavens, they felt an extremely terrifying battle intent. They immediately woke up and ended the inheritance. The two of them could not understand what kind of Tao technique battling the 9 Heavens was. It was only at this moment that the two of them finally understood. What the old ape released was Battle Against the 9 Heavens. Battle Against the 9 Heavens battle soul would fuse with one's body. In an instant, one's lifespan would be exhausted to raise one's combat strength to the limit. By releasing Battle Against the 9 Heavens, it meant that one's life would be left in that instant. That instant was an eternity. Boom. There was a loud boom. Elder Ape's staff smashed into the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's tortoiseshell. The massive force shattered the surrounding void, stirring up raging waves in the galaxy. Elder Ape's staff shattered. As for the thick and massive tortoiseshell, it remained intact as it stood tall in the cosmos. Upon seeing this scene, the eyes of many experts dimmed. Only Elder Ape roared with laughter. Amidst his laughter, Elder Ape's figure gradually dissipated. Finally, he vanished into nothingness as his soul dissipated. The battlefield regained its calm. The atmosphere was a little odd as there was complete silence. The mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador did not appear the entire time. He did not even make a sound. If it were him, he would have mocked the old ape when he saw this scene. As the force gradually dissipated, the Imperial Lords extended their perception over and landed on the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's body. They could not help but be alarmed as their hearts palpitated. Everyone widened their eyes as disbelief suffused their faces. Although the massive tortoise shell was intact, the vitality within it had nearly dissipated. There was no mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. All that was left was a pile of tattered flesh. Pest! Everyone drew a cold gasp. Through the tortoise shell, the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador was smashed into meat paste. His body and soul were destroyed as he perished. Perhaps only Suzimo and Monkey were not surprised by this outcome. Back then, Emperor Dojan had used Battle Against the 9 Heavens to kill the Great Skylord. Although Elder Ape did not become a great emperor, the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador was still worlds apart from the Great Skylord. Furthermore, the fat and thin elders had ignited their vitality to destroy the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's world. Although the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador had perished, Suzimo did not feel any joy. He had relied on the fat and thin elders from the Sword World and Elder Apes' sacrifice to kill the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador, who said that there were no more elites in the Middle World. Whoever dared to belittle the experts of this world would have to pay the price. The War of the Heavens was destined to be extremely tragic. However, when he saw this scene, Suzimo still felt a sense of sorrow. Perhaps Elder Ape no longer had any regrets. When he was about to leave, his carefree and heroic laughter was enough to know how he felt. Elder Ape knew that he had killed the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador with a single strike. More importantly, he wanted to regain the dignity of the Sanguine Apes. Back then, in order to protect the Sanguine Apes, he had been forced to kneel in front of the Heavens Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. From that moment on, the Sanguine Apes no longer had the battle soul. They also no longer had the fearless spirit to fight against the heavens. And this strike was like a wake-up call to the Sanguine Apes. It gradually awakened the bloodthirst and fighting spirit that had been dormant for a long time. The auras of many Sanguine Ape Imperial Lords surged as their eyes glowed with a sanguine light. They charged towards the Heavenly Court's Imperial Lords. The death of the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador still affected the Heavenly Court's army significantly. In addition, the Sword World, Sanguine Ape World, and Hell's army's charge caused quite a bit of chaos on the Heavenly Court's side. However, the Heavenly Court's Imperial Lord experts still held the absolute advantage in terms of numbers and strength. After fighting for a while longer, the Heavenly Court's lords gradually stabilized their footing. Although they no longer had an unstoppable pinnacle Imperial Lord like the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador, it was only a matter of time before the Heavenly Court's army wiped out the Sword World and Sanguine Ape World's Imperial Lords. End of this chapter. Chapter 3195. Seeing the fat and thin elders and the Blood Ape Realm Lord sacrificing themselves to kill the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Emissary, many Imperial Emperors in the 3,000 domains were moved. The heroism of facing death with great passion caused slight ripples to appear in their hearts that had long been tranquil like an ancient well. The blood in many Imperial Emperors' bodies seemed to become a little hot. Some Imperial Emperors subconsciously clenched their fists. Some Imperial Emperors took a step forward as if they wanted to do something. An Imperial Emperor suddenly said, "Actually, if it weren't for Great Emperor Araki Takashi and Great Emperor Blood Butterfly in this life, we wouldn't be able to stay out of this and would be forced to be involved in this war." Since ancient times, this had been the case for several wars of the heavens. Even if they wanted to stay out of it, the Heavenly Court would force them to take sides and make a choice. It was the same in this life. Originally, they only had two endings. Either they would be forced by the Heavenly Court to fight against the army of Hell, Ashura's army, or they would be refined by the Lord of the Underworld and turned into lonely graves. Another Imperial Emperor sighed. Actually, it was the Sword Realm, Blood Ape Realm, Great Wasteland Realm, and Heaven Wasteland Realm who took on everything for us. Originally, this was a turmoil that swept through the 3,000 domains and affected all living beings. However, at this moment, it was the Imperial Emperors of the Sword Realm and Heaven Wasteland Realm who blocked the Heavenly Court's army for the 3,000 domains and all living beings. It was also because of this that they had the choice and opportunity to stay out of it. An Imperial Emperor looked up in the direction of the Heavenly Court with a guilty expression and murmured softly, "Great Emperor Araki Takashi established his Tao to protect the common people. Now, he is fighting against Great Emperor Blood Butterfly and several lords of the Heavenly Court, and we don't know if he is alive or dead, just to break the shackles that have bound us for countless years. What are we doing? We're watching and waiting. We want to wait until the outcome of the battle of the Heavenly Court is decided before making a choice. If the Heavenly Court wins, we can also avoid the disaster and not be implicated. If the Heavenly Court loses, we can naturally ascend to the vast thousand domains." This was what most Imperial Emperors were thinking. However, at this moment, Someone had said it out loud. That monarch smiled and said, "We're just a little selfish. There's nothing wrong with that. After all, no one wants to die." After a pause, the imperial emperor expert stopped smiling and asked, "But let's ask ourselves, if the heavenly court wins in the end, can we really live the rest of our lives with a clear conscience? If the heavenly court is defeated, can we really ascend to the greater world with a clear conscience?" The imperial emperors fell silent. However, it seemed that someone had already made a decision. The battlefield of Heaven Wasteland Domain was even more dangerous than that of the Sword World, and the situation was even more critical. The Sword World no longer had the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador, but the Heaven Wasteland Domain still had young Master Xian Tian. Even though Su Zimo was holding back more than 50 Imperial Emperors, the Heavenly Court still had 600 to 700 Imperial Emperors left. The Heaven Wasteland Domain could not resist at all. Even if a peak Sovereign Emperor could not defeat a Great Perfection Sovereign Emperor and was severely injured, it would be difficult for them to die immediately. Only when a peerless Imperial Emperor encountered a peak Sovereign Emperor would his life be in danger. And ordinary Imperial Emperors would not be unharmed in such a battle between Emperors. The casualties were the greatest. The number of ordinary Imperial Emperors of Heaven Wasteland Domain was rising rapidly. On the other side, with the cooperation of young Master Xian Tian and the 50 Imperial Emperors of the Heavenly Court, they had already surrounded Su Zimo in a void. There was no way for him to escape. The distance between the two sides was extremely close. As long as young Master Xian Tian gave the order, Su Zimo would be killed on the spot. At this moment, a sorrowful cry came from the direction of Heaven Wasteland Domain. Su Zimo seemed to have sensed something. His heart seemed to have suddenly contracted, as if it was grabbed by a pair of invisible hands, making him unable to breathe. He abruptly turned around and looked over. On the chaotic battlefield of Heaven Wasteland Domain, a blood-stained figure had his chest pierced and was sent flying. The vitality in his body dissipated and his primordial spirit dimmed. He could no longer live. Su Zimo's mind was blown. He was stunned and his lips trembled slightly as he muttered, "Human Emperor, husband." In Heaven Wasteland Domain, immortal King Ling Long's eyes were red from crying. She shouted and rushed out of Heaven Wasteland Domain's great array. Feng Cantian, Lin Xuanji, and the others hurriedly acted but still could not stop immortal King Ling Long. She used the 9 palace subtle steps and rushed into the battlefield of Imperial Emperors. Ling Long was only an immortal king. She was almost courting death by entering the battlefield of Emperors. The residual force from the collision of any Imperial Emperors could kill her. And at this moment, she seemed to have forgotten about the danger. There was only one person in her eyes. Father, mother. Lin Lei's eyes were filled with tears. He wanted to rush out as well but was held back by Feng Cantian. Lin Luo was also stopped by Lin Xuanji. Feng Santian's face was pale. He clenched his fists and his body trembled uncontrollably. He was extremely sad. He and Lin Zhan had known each other since Heaven Wasteland Domain and had fought side by side countless times until now. Lin Zhan was his best brother. In his heart, Lin Zhan had an irreplaceable position. He even wanted to rush out like immortal King Ling Long and run to Lin Zhan's side. If they were going to die, they would die together. But Lin Zhan looked over and shook his head slightly. Then he looked at Lin Lei and Lin Luo. At that moment, Feng Cantian suddenly calmed down. There was no need for words between them. They already knew each other's thoughts. Lin Zhan was worried about Lin Lei and Lin Luo. Feng Cantian could only suppress the sadness in his heart and hold Lin Lei tightly, protecting him and not letting him leave Heaven Wasteland Domain. Lin Luo looked at her mother's back and cried silently. Her face was already full of tears. She knew that her mother had not forgotten the danger. Her mother knew that it was dangerous, and she did not intend to continue living. She wanted to accompany her father and leave together. Immortal King Ling Long rushed into the battlefield of emperors recklessly and hugged the wounded Lin Zhan tightly in her arms. Her tears were full of heartache and reluctance. Why did you run out? It was so dangerous. Lin Zhan looked at immortal King Ling Long gently. As he spoke, blood flowed from his mouth. The blood was dazzling red. Didn't you promise me that you would come back? Immortal King Ling Long felt that the person in her arms was getting colder and colder. She hugged Lin Zhan tighter and tighter as she cried and asked, Ling Long, I can't continue to accompany you. Lin Zhan sighed, and his aura became weaker. At the same time, young Master Xian Tian waved his hand and ordered 50 Imperial Emperors to attack at the same time. They wanted to kill Su Zimo completely. However, their attacks all missed when they landed on Su Zimo. Su Zimo seemed to have disappeared from his original spot. His entire body escaped into the void and entered an extremely strange state. Void. Many Imperial Emperors had never seen such a technique before and were slightly stunned. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Su Zimo released the ancient and modern battle. He burned his lifespan and unleashed his strength to the extreme, rushing in the direction of Heaven Wasteland Domain. There was a peak Imperial Emperor guarding in each of the 10 directions. Su Zimo disregarded everything and released his bloodline phenomenon, 5 Grotto Heavens, and all his trump cards. He directly rushed over. Boom! This peak Imperial Emperor of the Heavenly Courts attacked and almost instantly shattered Su Zimo's 5 Grotto Heavens. The bloodline phenomenon also shattered. The 100,000 feet tall ancient and modern battle soul shook violently. It didn't last long before it collapsed. Su Zimo was also severely injured. He spat out a large mouthful of blood. His back was torn, revealing a huge palm print. The surrounding flesh was a mess. Su Zimo seemed to be unaware. His eyes were red as he broke through the encirclement at the cost of serious injuries. He burned his lifespan and sped towards Heaven Wasteland Domain. He was Qinglian, a ranked 12 Creation Realm cultivator. His blood might be able to save the human emperor. Seeing this scene, young Master Xian Tian sneered. Although Su Zimo had broken out of his encirclement, he was also severely injured. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. They chased after him. Su Zimo wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Young Master Xian Tian's figure moved, and he led 50 Imperial Emperors to follow closely behind. Big Brother Lin. Su Zimo rushed forward and cut his wrist with a backhand sword. He brought it to Lin Zhan's mouth and said in a trembling voice, Drink, quick. At the same time, he released the lotus finger and injected vitality into Lin Zhan's body. But Lin Zhan's body was already in tatters. When his vitality entered, it couldn't stay at all and quickly dissipated. Qinglian's blood flowed into Lin Zhan's body, but there was no reaction. It only barely kept Lin Zhan alive. Su Zimo's heart gradually sank. To him, Lin Zhan wasn't just an emperor, a senior, and a good friend. Lin Zhan was the human emperor and the person he respected the most, who had led the human race of Tianhuang region to defeat the primordial 9 races, walked out of that dark and tragic period, and created a glorious era that belonged to the human race. Who was the one who still cared about the human race of Tianhuang region after ascending to the higher world? He even risked his life to forcefully descend to the lower world to save the human race from danger and turn the world upside down. The human emperor was a symbol of Tianhuang region. It was also a kind of faith. But now, this human emperor who had once dominated the world and fought for his entire life was about to die in the War of the Heavens. Su Zimo didn't want to believe it. He even hoped that everything at this moment was just a dream. Zimo, don't force yourself. Lin Zhan smiled, and a blush appeared on his face. It was as if he had a momentary recovery of consciousness. He said, although I didn't ascend to the higher world, this life can be considered vigorous. I look up to the world and have a clear conscience. It's just that I can't continue to fight with you. Su Zimo's eyes reddened. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. Looking up to the world and having a clear conscience. This was the life of the human emperor. Lin Zhan looked at immortal King Ling Long and said gently, Ling Long, I can't protect you from now on. I'll leave Lei and Luo to you. Immortal King Ling Long's heart was filled with sorrow. She opened her mouth slightly as if she wanted to say something, but she couldn't bear to. She knew that Lin Zhan only had one purpose for entrusting Lin Lei and Lin Luo to her, and that was to let her live. Looking at the dying Lin Zhan, immortal King Ling Long couldn't bear to refuse. She only nodded with tears in her eyes. In the end, Lin Zhan smiled and slowly closed his eyes. The human emperor had fallen. Heaven and earth mourned. Chapter 3196. Too many imperial emperors had fallen since the start of the battle. Even experts like the Lord of the Heavenly Courts and the Lord of the Underworld had died. Lin Zhan was just one of the most ordinary imperial emperors. He was not eye-catching. His death would not shock the thousands of races in the 3,000 worlds. However, to the people of Tianhuang mainland, this was an unbearable pain. Su Zimo was an unbearable pain. He clutched his chest as a sharp pain came from his heart. Only the warmth in his arms seemed to be able to alleviate some of his pain. It was the jade pendant that the evil the Arch had given him. This jade pendant could not be placed in his storage bag, so he had always kept it in his arms. Unknowingly, this jade pendant had become warm. Su Zimo had been surrounded by many imperial emperors and had no time to be distracted. He did not pay much attention to the changes in the jade pendant. The battle between the Thearchs was still bloody and cruel. It did not stop just because of Lin Zhan's death. Meanwhile, immortal King Ling Long hugged Lin Zhan's body that was gradually turning cold. She could die at any time in the battlefield. The Arch North Kuan, the Arch South Rock, Frost Dragon Empress, and the others led many imperial emperors toward immortal King Ling Long and the others, doing their best to protect them. However, they could not hold on for long. Young Master Xian Tian had already charged over with 50 imperial emperors. The Frost Dragon Empress stood out and charged toward young Master Xian Tian. The two of them exchanged blows. In an instant, the Frost Dragon Empress was sent flying by young Master Xian Tian. Countless dragon scales fell off, and her huge dragon body fell heavily into the starry sky, covered in wounds. The Frost Dragon Empress had long passed her peak and did not have much lifespan left. After this battle, she was already at the end of her life. Now, she was severely injured by young Master Xian Tian. She struggled for a while before collapsing weakly. Gradually, she stopped breathing. The Frost Dragon Empress was dead. Araki Takashi, die. Young Master Xian Tian charged forward. The blood in his body surged, supporting a world that enveloped Su Zimo. Su Zimo was still in a daze. He had yet to recover from the scene of Lin Zhan's death. Zimo, Araki Takashi. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they turned pale with fright and cried out one after another. In Heaven Wasteland Domain, one figure after another rose into the air. Some of them were only at the true Spirit Realm and Immortal King Realm, but they also recklessly rushed toward the battlefield of the Emperor Realm. The Nine-Tailed Demon Monarch, Divine Elephant Demon Monarch, Baizé Demon Monarch, and other Imperial Emperors of the Great Wasteland Domain also rushed towards Su Zimo. Young Master Xian Tian's world was not only going to devour Su Zimo, but it was also going to devour Immortal Emperor Ling Long and Lin Zhan, who were with Su Zimo. Su Zimo's mind shook, and he suddenly woke up. Lin Zhan had already perished, but Immortal King Ling Long mustn't die. Even if he had to risk his life, he would protect Immortal King Ling Long. However, his current condition was indeed not good. Su Zimo was severely injured and personally witnessed Lin Zhan's death. His mind was damaged. He was in a daze. He only hoped that the scene in front of him was just a dream. He only subconsciously stood up and stood in front of Immortal King Ling Long. In this daze, he struck out a palm at young Master Xian Tian. There was no bloodline phenomenon, no 5 grotto heavens, and no mystic arts. This palm looked weak and powerless, without any momentum to speak of. Ha! Young Master Xian Tian sneered. Just as he had expected, Su Zimo was already an arrow at the end of its flight. You can't even defeat these peak Imperial Emperors under my command. What do you have to fight me? Young Master Xian Tian's eyes were like torches as he sneered. The Nine-Tailed Demon Monarch, Divine Elephant Demon Monarch, Baizé Demon Monarch, and the others ignored the attacks of the Heavenly Court's Imperial Emperors behind them and unleashed a series of killing moves at young Master Xian Tian. No one can save the person I want to kill, young Master Xian Tian shouted, but he remained unmoved. He was absolutely confident that he could attack calmly. After killing Su Zimo, he could block the attacks of the Nine-Tailed Demon Monarch and the others in time. Just as Su Zimo's palm touched his world, young Master Xian Tian's expression suddenly froze. He felt an unusual throbbing in his heart. It flashed past as if it was an illusion. The chaotic and bloody battlefield seemed to have suddenly disappeared. He seemed to be floating on a clear lake, rippling with the waves as he looked at the brilliant galaxy in the sky. His heart fell into an unprecedented peace. For a moment, young Master Xian Tian was in a daze. He was intoxicated and forgot to return. On the battlefield, under everyone's gaze, young Master Xian Tian's figure suddenly stopped. For some reason, a satisfied smile appeared on his face. The terrifying world around him was silently disintegrating under Su Zimo's palm. Galaxy Dream Realm. Young Master Xian Tian seemed to have thought of something. His body shuddered as he suddenly woke up. This was the evil Thearch's Tao technique. The reason why the Lord of Vermilion Heaven died was because he was severely injured by the evil Thearch's secret technique at the start of the battle and was at a disadvantage. He could not break free from the evil Thearch's pursuit. However, the Galaxy Dream Realm was filled with flaws and was far from the dream realm created by the evil Thearch. Otherwise, given young Master Xian Tian's strength, he would not have been able to break free on his own. It was merely a coincidence that Su Zimo released that secret technique. Wu Dao's original body was once dragged into the dream realm by the evil Thearch. He lived for an entire lifetime and underwent countless tests. In other words, the evil Thearch's Tao technique remained in his body for an entire lifetime. He witnessed the evil Thearch releasing the Galaxy Dream Realm with his own eyes. More importantly, when he fell into a trance earlier on, he gathered all his thoughts and hoped that everything before him was a dream. Coupled with the enhancement of the Jade Pendant, his palm contained a wisp of the evil Thearch's Dream Realm Tao technique. Just a wisp was enough for young Master Xian Tian to suffer. Even though he had managed to break free from the Galaxy Dreamland that was full of flaws, his world had already dissipated in the Dreamland. More importantly, the killing moves of the nine-tailed demon Thearch, the divine elephant demon Thearch, and the other Imperial Emperors had already descended on him. Bang! 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 The divine weapons and secret techniques of the nine-tailed demon Thearch, the divine elephant demon Thearch, and the others all landed on young Master Xian Tian's vital points. Young Master Xian Tian was trapped in the dream realm. Without the protection of his world, his limbs and head did not have time to hide in the turtle shell and were exposed outside. He became the target of the nine-tailed demon Thearch and the other Imperial Emperors. Even the nine-tailed demon Thearch, the divine elephant demon Thearch, and the others did not expect this to happen. Even without the protection of the turtle shell, young Master Xian Tian's physical body was still extremely powerful. The divine weapons of the nine-tailed demon, Thearch, and the other Imperial Emperors smashed down on young Master Xian Tian's head. In the blink of an eye, he struck dozens of times before his head was shattered. In a battle between peak Imperial Emperors, a moment of distraction could determine the outcome. Furthermore, in such a chaotic battle, young Master Xian Tian was trapped in the dream realm. If he stood rooted to the ground, he was destined to die. Young Master Xian Tian never dreamed that he would be the first to arrive. Not only did he fail to kill Su Zimo, but he also lost his life. He had just woken up from his daze when he felt a sharp pain in his head, and his vision turned black. Before he could even cry out, young Master Xian Tian's head was smashed and his essence spirit was destroyed in front of everyone. He died on the spot. Chapter 3197. The successive deaths of the mysterious Sky Inspector, Heavenly Ambassador, and young Master Xian Tian not resolve the crisis faced by the Sword Realm and Heaven Wasteland domain. It only dealt a significant blow to the morale of the Heavenly Courts. However, this action also completely angered the Heavenly Courts army, and their attacks became even more frenzied. More and more Imperial Emperors died on the battlefield. Not only ordinary Imperial Emperors, but peerless Imperial Emperors also began to die, and even some peak Imperial Emperors died under the chaotic siege. The divine elephant demon emperor of the Great Wasteland domain died. The nine-tailed demon emperor, who charmed all living beings, also died. This Emperor Realm War became more and more tragic. The blood of imperial emperors dyed thousands of miles of the galaxy red. Su Zimo was severely injured previously, and he released an evil emperor Dao technique. The power of his primordial spirit was almost exhausted, and he was extremely weak. The Sword Realm was in danger. The Heaven Wasteland domain was in danger. At that time, the Blood Ape Realm, Kuan Pong Realm, Great Wasteland Domain, Flower Realm, Dragon Realm, and many other realms would suffer the endless slaughter of the Heavenly Court's army. A peak Imperial Emperor from the Heavenly Court attacked and killed another Imperial Emperor powerhouse. He sneered and said, "You ants from the medium-class world want to fight against the Heavenly Court? The Heavenly Courts is where the Heavenly Courts are. You will lose for sure. A bunch of animals. You want to jump out of the cage. This is the price you have to pay." The Iron Crown Elder's hair was disheveled, and he was covered in wounds. He stood with his sword and shouted, "Even if you destroy the Sword Realm today, there will be people in the Heaven Wasteland domain who will stand up and attack the Heavenly Courts in the future. One day, they will crush the Heavenly Courts." Emperor Kuan of the North also roared, "Our blood will not be spilled in vain." Ha 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 ha. A Heavenly Courts Emperor laughed. "Whoever dares to stand up, the Heavenly Courts will destroy them, even if it means destroying the 3,000 realms and killing all the middle worlds until there are no more living beings. Your blood will not be spilled in vain?" Another Heavenly Courts Emperor also sneered, "Other than your realms, who else in the 3,000 realms dares to go against the heavens?" And me. Another figure flew out of the Wasteland domain, bathed in flames, like a god of war, and sped into the battlefield. This was the Wasteland Lord. Behind him, there were several Imperial Emperors from Wudong Realm following closely behind. Their gazes were resolute. Back then, because Great Emperor Rocky Takashi had appeared to quell the voodoo poison, the Wudong Realm had been spared. Wudong Realm would always remember this kindness in its heart. "Count me in." A loud shout came from the direction of the barbarian world. The Lord of the barbarian world soared into the sky and charged toward the starry sky battlefield with 2 axes in his hands. His expression was resolute. And me. A celestial Dipper Realm's Imperial Emperor stepped forward. And me. And me. And us. One after another, voices rang out, resounding through the heavens and earth, reverberating endlessly. One after another, Imperial Emperors flew up from the various realms of the middle world and rushed to the battlefield without hesitation. In some realms, there was only one Imperial Emperor. This Imperial Emperor no longer hesitated. In some realms, some Imperial Emperors had been sleeping for millions of years, waiting for an opportunity to ascend to the great Kiliacosm. But at this moment, they chose to give up this opportunity and rush to the battlefield. The fat and thin elders had ignited their lives, the old ape's fighting spirit, the death of Lin Zhan, the 9-tailed demon emperor, the divine elephant demon emperor, and the other imperial emperors had finally awakened the passion that had been dormant in the middle world for many years. Although those who held the torch for everyone had frozen to death in the wind and snow, the flames that had been ignited had finally illuminated this world. More and more figures soared into the sky from all over the middle world, advancing forward courageously. This scene was extremely spectacular. Those voices were hot-blooded and impassioned, and they were powerful and resonant. Those figures were like shooting stars, shining with boundless light and cutting through the sky. The expressions of the Heavenly Court's Imperial Emperors became somewhat grave. It was just that there were not many Imperial Emperors from the Sword Realm, Heaven Wasteland Domain, and Blood Ape Realm added together, so they were not much of a threat to them. But if the Imperial Emperors of the Middle World joined forces, it was a force that could not be ignored. On the battlefield of the Heavenly Court, the battle between the great emperors was still ongoing, but both sides had already reached the limit of their bodies, and there was not much strength left. They were only relying on their Dao hearts and willpower. The final victor would depend on which side's willpower was stronger. Under the suppression of Wu Dao's true body, the Master of Dark Heaven and the Master of Dark Heaven were already at the end of their rope. Even the fists of Wu Dao's true body were badly mangled, revealing pieces of pale finger bones. But he did not seem to feel any pain. He raised his fists and continuously attacked the Master of Dark Heaven and the Master of Dark Heaven, as if he did not know fatigue. Boom. Finally, accompanied by a loud bang, the tortoise shell on the back of the Master of Dark Heaven was actually smashed by Wu Dao's true body. Countless fragments of the tortoise shell sank into the body of the Master of Dark Heaven, riddling his body with holes and causing blood to gush out. The Master of Dark Heaven let out a miserable cry. He was from the sacred beast Black Tortoise clan, and his defense was unparalleled. Ever since he descended from the greater world and entered the heavenly courts, even though he had experienced several War of the Heavens, when had he ever suffered such a serious injury? Of course, Wu Dao's true body was not in a good state either. The tortoise shell contained a huge recoil force that also shattered his arm. Wu Dao's true body had consumed a lot of qi and blood. In such a battle, it was impossible for him to regrow his arm even if he wanted to. But he still did not stop attacking. Even if his arm was shattered, there was no change in his eyes. The purple flames burned brighter and brighter. Kill! Wu Dao's true body shouted and took a step forward. Whoosh! Plow heaven's stride. Without the protection of the tortoise shell, this step directly created a huge bloody ravine on the body of the Master of Dark Heaven. Just one step and the Master of Dark Heaven was almost cut into two. Boom! Wu Dao's true body took a second step. The Master of Dark Heaven's head was instantly crushed by Wu Dao's true body, and his primordial spirit was destroyed. The Master of Dark Heaven was dead. At this time, the Dao seal of the heavenly courts was almost destroyed by the Styx River. After killing the Master of Dark Heaven, even if he could come back from the dead, he would descend to the greater world, and it would be difficult for him to return to the middle world. In the battle just now, because of the Styx River, 9 of the 10 gates of hell had collapsed. Although the gate of Avicii was still intact, Wu Dao's true body no longer had the strength and primordial spirit to summon the gate of Avicii. Seeing that the situation was not good, the Master of Dark Heaven dragged his severely injured body and turned to escape. Even if he was facing the one-armed Wu Dao's true body, he still did not dare to fight with him. In this battle, the Master of Dark Heaven was scared out of his wits. Wu Dao's true body was faster. In a few steps, he caught up with the Master of Dark Heaven. He stretched out his only arm, grabbed the Master of Dark Heaven's dragon tail, and suddenly exerted force. Whoosh! Wu Dao's true body lifted the Master of Dark Heaven's body, drew a huge arc in the air, and slammed him heavily on the heavenly courts. Boom! There was an earth-shattering sound. Dust mixed with dragon blood spread everywhere. It was bloody and tragic. The Master of Dark Heaven let out a sorrowful cry, and his dragon body twitched unconsciously. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. With this heavy fall, more than half of the dragon bones in his body were broken. The Master of Dark Heaven coughed up blood. His mind was blank, and he was dizzy. Before he could react, a shadow loomed over him. Wu Dao's true body descended from the sky, and his feet stomped down hard. Splat! The dragon's head was crushed, and blood splattered everywhere. The Master of Dark Heaven was dead. Chapter 3198. 2 of the 6 lords of the heavenly courts were gone. At this point of the battle, the situation was completely tilted. The remaining 4 lords of the heavenly courts were shocked when they saw that. They realized that the heavenly courts might not be able to defend anymore. The single-armed Wu Dao's true body was covered in blood, and the purple flames in his eyes burned brighter as he strode towards the 4 lords of the heavenly courts with a torrential aura. Before he even arrived, a tragic aura surged over. Who could match Wu Dao's true body with the might of killing 3 lords of the heavenly courts in a row? Wu Dao's true body arrived beside Daiyu and raised his single arm, punching towards Lord Yu Heaven. Daiyu attacked at the same time and slapped down with her fair palm. Bang! Bang! Lord Yu Heaven could not even gain the slightest advantage against Daiyu, let alone the combined forces of Wu Dao's true body and Daiyu. Poof! A scarlet blood mist burst forth from Lord Yu Heaven's body. His clothes were torn and his body was filled with cracks. It was a shocking sight. Wu Dao's true body and Dai Yu advanced once more and attacked consecutively. In less than 10 breaths, Lord Yu Heaven's head was shattered by Dai Yu's palm, and his essence spirit was destroyed. Lord Yu Heaven was dead. When the remaining 3 lords of the heavenly court saw that, they realized that it was over. However, they did not have much fear in their hearts. Even if they died, they would be reborn in the greater world. However, now that the heavenly courts were lost, the Fiend Lord, Evil Emperor, and Nirvana Ghost Mother would return to the greater world. That was a huge problem for them. Wu Dao's true body and Dai Yu turned around and arrived beside the Evil Emperor. In just 3 breaths, the Sun Heaven Lord was killed. Fiend Lord, Evil Emperor, Ghost Mother. Although the heavenly court's defeat was certain, the great Heaven Lord was still fearless and said slowly, "I'll wait for you guys in the greater world." Pausing for a moment, the great Heaven Lord's bloodshot gaze landed on Wu Dao's true body as he said coldly, "And you, Araki Takashi." Wu Dao's true body did not reply and attacked even more ferociously. There was less and less time left for him. He had to get rid of the remaining 2 masters of the heavenly court before the crisis struck. The Great Sky Sovereign and the Great Sky Sovereign couldn't hold on for long. They were besieged by Wu Dao's original body and the other 4. The heavenly court was finally destroyed in this era. The Demon Lord panted heavily as he looked up at the sky. Even with his temperament, there was a trace of excitement in the depths of his eyes. After waiting for so many years, they were finally going to return to the greater world. After the battle ended, Dai Yu heaved a sigh of relief and subconsciously looked towards Wu Dao's original body. At this moment, Wu Dao's main body had a solemn expression. Dai Yu seemed to have thought of something and wanted to walk towards Wu Dao's original body. "Don't come over." Wu Dao's original body shouted and moved, quickly distancing himself from Dai Yu. At this moment, the Fiend Master, Evil Emperor, Brahma Ghost Mother, and Dai Yu sensed something and their expressions changed. Above the heavenly court, in the direction of the great wide world, they suddenly felt an extremely terrifying pressure descend. This pressure had already far exceeded their imagination. Snap! There was a deafening bang that shook heaven and earth. The entire middle world was shaking and trembling, as though it could not withstand this pressure and was about to collapse. Boom! Another loud bang sounded. The sky above the heavenly court was pierced by a terrifying force, creating a gigantic hole. Pust! The expressions of the Fiend Master, Evil Emperor, and Brahma Ghost Mother changed starkly. That sky was the law barrier between the middle world and the greater world. But now, this force actually pierced through the law barrier. A huge hole was forcefully punched through the sky of the middle world. Back then, there was a great war that almost destroyed the 3 realms in the greater world. Only then did the law barrier between the middle world and the greater world shatter, causing them to fall from the greater world. Several eras had passed. Although the law barrier had not recovered to its original state, it was more or less repaired. But now, the law barrier was pierced once again. Although it was not as destructive as the Great War, the terror of this force was enough to shock the Fiend Master and the other 2. This force pierced through the law barrier, breaking through the world, and consumed a lot of energy. After descending in the heavenly court, it still contained a terrifying power that could not be resisted. A dazzling brilliance blasted towards Wu Dao's true body. It contained the aura of death, wanting to erase him from this world. The Fiend Master, Evil Emperor, and Brahma Ghost Mother all subconsciously retreated, afraid that they would be affected. This force was too strong. If it landed on them, they would not be able to resist it. Dai Yu subconsciously went forward, but it was too late. Wu Dao's true body could not avoid it. Not to mention, he was already exhausted and did not have much combat strength left. Even if he was in peak condition, he could not avoid this brilliance. This brilliance contained a supreme Dao technique that far surpassed his cultivation realm. Moreover, it had completely locked onto his aura. He could not dodge at all. This brilliance was dazzling, attracting the attention of countless experts in the middle world. On the battlefield of the middle world, there was a trace of stagnation. Many imperial emperors felt their hearts skip a beat. They subconsciously looked up and saw such a brilliance breaking through the sky, dispersing the fog and descending on the head of Wu Dao's true body. Many experts in the middle world did not know what had happened. However, they could all feel the terrifying power contained in this brilliance. This power could almost destroy everything. This nightmare that had haunted him for many years finally erupted. A great calamity had descended. Wu Dao's true body did not intend to wait for death. Even if there was only a trace of survival, he had to fight with all his might. This Wu Dao's true body had an extraordinary meaning to Su Zimo. Just before this brilliance descended, Wu Dao's true body raised the hell-suppressing cauldron with one arm and hung it above his head. Boom! There was a loud bang. Under everyone's watchful eyes, this invincible the arch-divine weapon was instantly shattered into pieces by this brilliance. The difference in strength was too great. It was almost as easy as crushing dry weeds. Countless fragments of the hell-suppressing cauldron poured into Wu Dao's true body, riddling it with holes. His only arm was also instantly shattered, turning into a cloud of blood mist. This brilliance did not stop. It continued to descend. Under the bombardment of this brilliance, Wu Dao's true body also exploded, flesh and blood flying everywhere. All the beings in the middle world widened their eyes. Their faces were full of shock as they watched this scene in disbelief. What had happened? In the heavenly court, only Blood Butterfly the Arch, the Demon Lord, the Evil the Arch, and the Brahma Ghost Mother were left. The heavenly court's leader was nowhere to be seen. It seemed that the war of the heavens in this life had already been won. But what was with this brilliance? The Archiraki Takashi had fallen? Could this be a punishment from the heavens? Could it be that the heavens were warning them that even if they succeeded, they would have to pay a heavy price? After shattering the hell-suppressing cauldron and Wu Dao's true body, the brilliance did not dissipate. In the vast cloud of blood mist, an inconspicuous dark ancient mirror fell into the starry sky. In the chaotic battlefield, almost no one noticed it. However, the ray of light only paused for a moment before it followed closely behind and bombarded the dark ancient mirror. Chapter 3199. Under the impact of the light, the prison-suppressing cauldron and Wu Dao's physical body were shattered. Naturally, his martial soul could not withstand it. However, when Wu Dao took out the prison-suppressing cauldron, he had expected this outcome. Therefore, his martial soul flickered and escaped into the netherworld treasure mirror. As long as his martial soul was not destroyed, he would have a chance to make a comeback. Legend had it that the netherworld treasure mirror was the weapon of the Lord of Hell. However, after Wu Dao's martial soul had entered the Emperor realm, he still could not refine it for his own use. Wu Dao's martial soul speculated that the netherworld treasure mirror might have an even greater origin. In the depths of the netherworld treasure mirror, there was a hidden consciousness. It could be the artifact spirit of this treasure. Now, Wu Dao's martial soul was hiding in the netherworld treasure mirror. He wanted to use this treasure to hide his aura and avoid the crisis from the Great Thousand World. Unfortunately, the light was extremely sensitive and continued to chase after him. Wu Dao's martial soul did not escape. Under the pursuit of the light, he could not escape at all. Now, he could only place his hopes on the artifact spirit in the depths of the netherworld treasure mirror. Now, he was bound to the netherworld treasure mirror. If the light wanted to kill him, it would have to break the netherworld treasure mirror first. The artifact spirit in the depths of the netherworld treasure mirror seemed to have sensed the danger. In the depths of the netherworld treasure mirror, in the darkness, a scarlet suddenly appeared. Wu Dao's martial soul saw it clearly. It was a drop of blood. Boom. There was no time to think. The light from the Great Thousand World had already landed on the netherworld treasure mirror. There was a loud explosion, causing the middle world to shake continuously. Countless stars around were shattered and turned into dust. The netherworld treasure mirror was already full of cracks. After being hit by the light, it fell rapidly and could shatter at any time. Wu Dao's martial soul, who was hiding in the netherworld treasure mirror, was also shaken to the point of losing consciousness. However, he faintly felt that most of the power in the light was not dissolved by the netherworld treasure mirror. Instead, it was blocked by the drop of blood in the netherworld treasure mirror. The Netherworld treasure mirror might be an Emperor divine weapon, similar to the prison suppressing cauldron and other divine weapons. It was because of that drop of blood that the Netherworld treasure mirror had undergone a qualitative change. What kind of creature's blood actually contained such terrifying power? Just one drop was enough to block most of the power contained in the light. Although that beam of light didn't have much power left after piercing through the barrier between the three realms, it was still enough to destroy everything in this dimensional realm. The drop of blood let out a scream of anger, unwillingness, and resentment. This scream caused Wu Dao's martial soul to feel even more pain. It was clearly just a scream, but as his consciousness blurred, he seemed to hear the voices of countless living beings mixed together. Wu Dao's true body could only feel that he was falling uncontrollably along with the cracked Netherworld treasure mirror. When he gradually regained his consciousness, he discovered that he was already in the Avicii Great Hell. The light from the Greater Thousand Worlds still hadn't given up. It seemed that as long as Wu Dao's original body didn't die, it would continue to chase after him until he was completely obliterated. Rumble. This beam of light descended on Taiwei Mountain. In an instant, it razed Taiwei Mountain to the ground. The terrifying power pierced through the Avicii Great Hell and continued to penetrate deeper, completely piercing through the Avicii Great Hell. This hell was condensed by the Emperor of Infinity with his own flesh and blood. For countless years, even a powerhouse like the Demon Lord couldn't do anything about it. But in this life, it was easily penetrated by the power from the Greater Thousand World. With a boom, the Netherworld treasure mirror couldn't withstand this power and completely shattered. Poof! The drop of blood in the Netherworld treasure mirror suddenly exploded, blocking in front of the light. Wu Dao's original body didn't have time to think. He took this opportunity to escape into the dry well of the Avicii Great Hell. This dry well led to the infernal world. That drop of blood definitely couldn't block the power contained in the light. At most, it could only delay it for a moment. Wu Dao's original body had to take advantage of this time to escape into the infernal world. Of course, the infernal world alone couldn't block that light at all. Wu Dao's original body thought of the Nether River. To be precise, it was the deepest part of the Nether River. Daiyu had once said that there was a great terror in the depths of the Nether River. Back then, when he was a quasi-emperor, he came to the Nether River to cultivate in seclusion. He had once tried to cross the Nether River to explore the secrets in the depths of the Nether River. As he walked further and further, he also felt the terror from the depths of the Nether River. Later, a cold wind suddenly blew from the depths of the Nether River. The 6 supreme flames that Wu Dao cultivated in his domain were all extinguished in an instant. Even his martial soul flame became swaying and flickering, sometimes bright and sometimes dark. At the same time, an uncontrollable and irresistible sense of fear rose in the heart of Wu Dao's original body, making his scalp tingle. At that time, the situation in the vast wilderness was grim. Wu Dao's original body didn't dare to take the risk, so he gave up the idea of exploring and retreated halfway. At this moment, there was a great calamity from the Greater Thousand World chasing after him. Wu Dao's original body couldn't care less. The only place he could think of that might be able to resist that light was the depths of the Nether River. In the blink of an eye, Wu Dao's original body descended on the infernal world. His martial soul flickered and instantly descended above the Nether River. Wu Dao's original body looked at the depths of the Nether River. Almost without hesitation, he sped all the way forward. When he arrived at the area where the Nether River was, he could no longer teleport. All Dao techniques seemed to have lost their effect here. He could feel that the light had not given up. It had already shattered the blood in the Netherworld treasure mirror and chased him to the infernal world. The infernal world was gloomy and dark, filled with netherchi everywhere. Wu Dao's original body's martial soul had already escaped to the sky above the Nether River. Normally, with the obstruction of the 9 springs of hell, it was enough to cover all traces. However, that light seemed to contain some kind of spirituality. After pausing for a moment, it directly shattered the Acheron of hell and went against the flow, going straight to Wu Dao's original body in the sky above the Nether River. There was no way for Wu Dao's original body to escape from the Acheron of heaven. This ray of light was going to kill them all. Wu Dao's original body was only left with a weak, martial soul. As he continued to go deeper into the Nether River, he felt more and more pressure, and the sense of fear grew deeper and deeper. Although his martial soul had reached the Emperor realm, it was far better than the last time. However, after the War of the Heavens, he had exhausted too much. His martial soul was already at the end of its tether, and its flame was weak. If another gust of cold wind blew from the depths of the Nether River, his martial soul would probably be extinguished on the spot. Even so, Wu Dao's original body still did not stop. He could only gamble. Everything in the depths of the Nether River was unknown. Perhaps he still had a chance of survival. However, if he stopped, that light would not give him any chance and would kill him on the spot. However, compared to the speed of that light, Wu Dao's original body's martial soul was too slow. The killing intent behind him was getting stronger and stronger. If he continued to escape like this, he was afraid that before he reached the depths of the Nether River, that light would have already caught up and killed him. Chapter 3200. The beam of light chased up to the sky above the underworld river. The originally calm and dark river water seemed to have been stimulated by something. Suddenly, stormy waves surged, as if they wanted to drown the beam of light. The powerful energy contained in the underworld river could even erase the Tao seals in the heavenly court. But now, the torrential river water could not devour the beam of light. However, under the obstruction of the huge waves, the speed of the beam of light was greatly reduced. This allowed Wu Dao's original body to temporarily escape from danger. As Wu Dao's original body's martial soul continued to go deeper into the underworld river, the fear that came from the depths of the underworld river became stronger and stronger. In front of him, between the sky and the water, Wu Dao's original body saw the ball of fire from before again. However, this time, beside the fire, he did not see the dilapidated ancient ship. The last time he saw the dilapidated ancient ship, it was floating on the surface of the river in the distance, motionless. At that time, he was still a little confused. The underworld river flowed continuously, and there were 4 paths. Why did this strange dilapidated ship stop in the same place and not flow downstream? But this time, the dilapidated ancient ship had disappeared. Wu Dao's original body did not have the energy to think too much. The danger behind him had not been resolved. Crossing the underworld river, even if he had a physical body at his peak state, would consume a lot of energy and be very dangerous. Now, he only had one martial soul left. He had just gone through a great battle and was extremely weak. He had fled all the way here and was already an arrow at the end of its flight. He did not dare to approach the ball of fire at all. Even the slightest injury could cause his martial soul to be completely extinguished. As time passed, the flame of Wu Dao's original body's martial soul became weaker and dimmer. His consciousness started to become blurry. Only a little bit of will and instinct remained, and he continued to flee forward. After an unknown period of time, Wu Dao's original body suddenly felt a monstrous resentment and anger rushing towards him, almost suffocating him. He subconsciously stopped and maintained his last bit of consciousness as he looked over. What he saw shocked him greatly. The flame of his martial soul flickered and was almost extinguished. Below him, the underworld river was still flowing continuously. However, right in front of him was a boundless sea of blood. The smell of blood soared into the sky. Back then, when he saw the ball of fire, he had noticed that the surface of the river near the ball of fire was completely red. At first, he thought that it was the reflection of the fire that made it look like this. Only now did he realize that there was a sea of blood in front of him. What was even more terrifying was that the unwillingness, anger, and resentment that flowed out of this sea of blood seemed familiar. It was extremely similar to the emotions in the drop of blood in the Netherworld treasure mirror. Wu Dao's main body suddenly thought of a possibility. Perhaps the drop of blood in the Netherworld treasure mirror came from this sea of blood before him. Just a single drop of blood was already so powerful. What kind of terrifying power was hidden in this boundless sea of blood? How was this sea of blood formed? Wu Dao's original body had once drifted down the river Styx for over 100 years, passing through 4 different underworlds before finally returning to the starting point. In other words, the existence of the Nether River was like a flowing river without a true source. At that time, Wu Dao's original body was somewhat puzzled. If that was the case, what was in the center of the Nether River? Since there was no source, where did the power of the Nether River come from? At this moment, it seemed that everything had an answer. In this short delay, the brilliance behind him had broken through the obstruction of the Nether River and was getting closer and closer. Even the Nether River could not stop this brilliance. As for the boundless sea of blood in front of him, everything was unknown. Wu Dao's original body could feel that this sea of blood contained an extremely terrifying power that was far more powerful than the Nether River. If his extremely weak martial soul were to run into the blood sea, it would most likely be extinguished on the spot by the blood qi. His body and Dao would vanish. Wu Dao's original body looked back. He had no way out. Wu Dao's original body no longer hesitated and drifted toward the sea of blood in front of him. Whoosh! As soon as he arrived above the sea of blood, endless blood surged over and enveloped his martial soul. A series of sizzling sounds could be heard. His martial soul flickered continuously and the flame became smaller and smaller. It did not last long before it was completely extinguished. The soul of Wu Dao's original body fell into the sea of blood, and his consciousness continued to sink. He realized that Wu Dao's original body was finished. His soul was destroyed. However, when his consciousness finally disappeared, he suddenly thought of something. Since the sea of blood in front of him was calm and without waves, why did the dilapidated ancient ship from back then disappear? He did not have the chance to think of the final answer before he lost consciousness. The brilliance from the greater world broke through layers of huge waves of the Nether River and chased close to the sea of blood. However, it suddenly stopped. The brilliance seemed to have become a little confused and could not find its target. It patrolled around but still found nothing. Under the continuous erosion of the Nether River and the sea of blood, the brilliance became dimmer and dimmer. Finally, it dissipated and merged into the sea of blood. Splash! At this moment, the sound of water could be heard. Ripples suddenly appeared in the originally calm sea of blood. A pitch-black and extremely simple dilapidated ancient ship broke through the surface of the sea from the depths of the blood mist and sailed over slowly. When it arrived at the place where the martial soul of Wu Dao's original body was extinguished, the dilapidated ancient ship suddenly stopped. Immediately after, a figure stood up slowly from the pitch-black ship. The figure curled up and squatted in the sunken hull of the ship, almost fusing with the dilapidated ancient ship. If it did not move, it would be almost impossible to distinguish. The figure wore a wide black robe and had disheveled hair. His sparse black hair covered his entire face, and one could vaguely see his pale skin. However, one could not see his exact appearance and could not tell if he was a human or a ghost. The figure glanced sideways and looked at the soul of Wu Dao's original body in the sea of blood. Hee hee! A strange laughter sounded from the head of black hair. All of a sudden, the black-robed figure waved casually and his wide sleeves fell into the sea of blood. He scooped up the soul of Wu Dao's original body and placed it gently on the ancient ship. Then, the black-robed figure hooked his finger at the flame floating in the sea of blood. A wisp of scarlet flame floated out and landed on the soul of Wu Dao's original body. Whoosh! The martial spirit flame that had been extinguished was ignited once again. Although it was still very weak, the soul of Wu Dao's original body was gradually regaining its vitality. The black-robed figure turned around. His black hair covered his face, and his faintly discernible gaze fell on Wu Dao's original body through his sparse black hair. He seemed to be staring at him. His gaze was a little strange and indescribable. After a long while, the black-robed figure withdrew his gaze. He did not do anything, but the dilapidated ancient ship under him swayed and moved. It carried Wu Dao's original body into the depths of the sea of blood and gradually disappeared into the vast blood mist. The Nether River also returned to its calm state as if nothing had happened. Chapter 3201. The beings of the dimensional realm had no idea what was going on in the infernal realm. Even Dai Yu's divine sense could not go any deeper after probing the Nether River. This unforeseen event happened too suddenly. Everyone merely saw Great Emperor Desolate Marshall's body being shattered and his essence spirit destroyed by a beam of light from the major world. After Wu Dao's martial soul rushed into the Blood Sea, even Qinglian's martial soul completely lost contact with him. No one knew if she was dead or alive. The Blood Sea seemed to have its own territory that could isolate all probing. Although the ray of light from the Great Thousand World had disappeared, it had penetrated the barrier of the three realms. This would add countless unpredictable variables to the end of the War of the Heavens. Su Zimo vaguely thought of something. However, Wu Dao's martial soul had just suffered a great calamity and no one knew if he was dead or alive. He had not recovered from the shock and his mind was in a mess. At this moment, the Demon Master had already flown into the sky and flew toward the Great Thousand World. The evil emperor looked back at Su Zimo and seemed to want to say something. However, he hesitated and also turned to fly toward the Great Thousand World. The barrier of the three realms had been penetrated. The damage was not big, and it was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The reason why the Demon Lord, the evil emperor, the Brahma Ghost Mother, and the others were suppressed in the middle world and could only display the battle prowess of a great emperor was because of this restriction. At this moment, as the barrier between the Great Thousand World and the middle world was broken, the Demon Master, the evil emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother could feel the power from the Great Thousand World. There was a flaw in the rules that suppressed them. The auras of the three were rising rapidly. In the blink of an eye, they had surpassed the Great Emperor level and reached another level. Dai Yu, who was standing in the distance, felt the aura of the Brahma Ghost Mother, and her face changed slightly. She was different from the Demon Master and the evil emperor. The Brahma Ghost Mother did not leave immediately. Instead, she raised her head slightly and looked at the Great Thousand World through the hole that was healing at the end of the sky. She seemed to be enjoying it, and a smile appeared on her face. As her powers recovered, the wrinkles on her face gradually disappeared. All of a sudden, the Brahma Ghost Mother turned around and stared at Dai Yu in the distance with murderous intent. At the same time, Su Zimo sensed something and suddenly looked toward the heavenly court. He saw the Brahma Ghost Mother turned around and locked her gaze on Dai Yu. Oh no! Su Zimo's heart sank. In the Great Thousand World, the Brahma Ghost Mother was defeated by Dai Yu. In terms of combat power, she was Yu's Dai Yu. But at this moment, the barrier between the three worlds had been shattered, and the restrictions that bound the Brahma Ghost Mother had disappeared. Her original strength was rapidly recovering. The Demon Lord had once said that their cultivation bases were above the Great Emperor level, and this strength was enough to annihilate everything in this dimensional realm. Before you, you. You was you of you? You. The Demon Master, Evil Emperor, and you would not be a threat to you. However, Wu Dao's tribulation had caused the three realms barrier to shatter. The Brahma Ghost Mother's powers began to recover in the middle world. Su Zimo howled and sprinted towards the heavenly courts like a madman. In the heavenly court, facing the Brahma Ghost Mother, Dai Yu did not run away. She was calm. She knew that she had been locked on by the Brahma Ghost Mother and could not escape. The difference in strength was too great. Dai Yu even had a feeling that the Brahma Ghost Mother in the distance only needed a finger to crush her to death. You just threatened me, the Brahma Ghost Mother said with a smile. The wrinkles on the Brahma Ghost Mother's face had disappeared. She had transformed into a mature and beautiful woman. Her lips were bright red and full of temptation. You probably don't know. Even in the Great Thousand World, there are not many who dare to speak to me in that tone. Those who dare to make a move against me are even fewer. And in this middle world, a little butterfly dares to show off in front of me. How interesting, haha. Suddenly, the Brahma Ghost Mother stopped smiling and slowly raised her head. A sinister and terrifying ghost face appeared behind her. She stared at Dai Yu and asked faintly, "Do you know your crime?" As soon as these words were spoken, the surrounding temperature plummeted. "If you do it again, I will attack again," Dai Yu said indifferently. She knew that the Brahma ghost mother wanted to kill her. No matter what she said, she could not change the result. At the Brahma ghost mother's level, she would not change her mind just because of a few words. The Brahma ghost mother glanced at Suzimo, who was running toward her, and smiled. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. It's a pity that you immortal couple will be separated forever. As soon as his voice fell, the Brahma ghost mother attacked. Don't! Suzimo roared but could not stop this from happening. He could only watch helplessly as the Brahma ghost mother's palm slapped down. Dayu also turned her head and looked deeply at Suzimo. It happened so suddenly that the two did not even have time to say a word. There were too many emotions contained in this glance. There was tenderness, reluctance, regret, and longing. This glance was also their final farewell. The Brahma ghost mother only slapped down in the direction of Dayu across the void. There was no earth-shattering scene. Dayu instantly turned into a cloud of blood mist. The difference in strength was too great. Suzimo gradually came to a stop and stood on the spot in a daze. He looked at the blood mist in the heavenly courts with lifeless eyes and a dim gaze. It was as if he had lost his soul in an instant. When the human emperor died, he felt incomparable grief. At this moment, he could not feel anything. His mind was blank, as if the most important thing in his life had suddenly been lost. This scene was beyond everyone's expectations. When the experts from the 3,000 worlds saw this scene, their eyes widened and their faces were full of shock. Everyone could predict that the War of the Heavens would be incomparably tragic. However, no one expected that after the fat and thin elders, the elder ape, the nine-tailed demon emperor, the divine elephant demon emperor, the human emperor, and many other emperors had died, Great Emperor Rocky Takashi was also killed by the power from the Great Thousand Worlds. And now, even Blood Butterfly Great Emperor had perished. Who would have thought that the War of the Heavens would end with the death of two great emperors? Although the War of the Heavens had been won, the price paid was too great. Ghost Mother! A loud shout was heard. The evil emperor's figure reappeared in the heavenly courts. He had seen the changes below and returned. The demon master's figure had almost disappeared. In the clouds, the demon master looked down indifferently at the situation below. His face was expressionless and his eyes were as calm as an ancient well. It was as if everything that happened below had nothing to do with him. Asya, you're late. The Brahma ghost mother had a smile on her face, but she pretended to sigh regretfully. She's already dead. The evil emperor's face was gloomy, and he did not say a word. He glanced at the blood mist and blocked it behind him before looking coldly at the Brahma ghost mother. Chapter 3202. In the middle world, the mark of Dayu's Dao seal was gradually dimming and dissipating. After all, Dayu was only a great emperor of a middle world, and not the demon lord, the evil emperor. These experts from the vast thousand domains could not reach the level of immortality. Sighs could be heard from all over the middle world. The dissipation of the Dao seal meant that the great emperor of this era had fallen. This result was beyond everyone's expectations. Because of the persistence of the Araki Takashi Great Emperor and the Blood Butterfly Great Emperor, the countless beings of the middle world were not involved in this catastrophe. Who would have thought that the two of them would end up like this? The two of them were outstanding experts of the past and present, and created an unprecedented era of two emperors. Unfortunately, the person he loves has fallen in front of him. I don't know how much pain junior brother Su must be enduring. Imo Ching stood in Heaven Wasteland Domain, her face full of worry, looking at the lonely figure in the starry sky. On her shoulder, Bing Dai was crying silently. In Bing Dai's heart, the Blood Butterfly Great Emperor had brought countless glory and dignity to her people, and had also sacrificed everything for her people. Yunju sighed softly. Even someone as intelligent as her did not know how to comfort her in the face of this matter. Yin Beichen seemed to think of something, bowed his head and did not speak. Perhaps only he could empathize and understand the pain in Su Zimo's heart. At this moment, Su Zimo was still standing blankly in the starry sky, his eyes empty, his expression absent-minded, and his soulless appearance faintly made one's heart ache. The Brahma ghost mother's eyes turned and fell on Suzimo. She licked her red lips and seemed to want to attack again. But she knew that if she attacked, the evil emperor would definitely stop her. There was no winner or loser between the two of them. There was no need to fight to the death for an ant from a middle world. The Brahma ghost mother smiled slightly, no longer lingering, and turned to fly toward the vast thousand domains. For her, killing Daiyu was as simple as crushing an ant. It was just a casual action. She would not take it to heart, and would even forget about it in the blink of an eye. Who would care about an ant that they had trampled to death? The evil emperor looked at the Brahma ghost mother in the distance and did not stop her. Even if she tried to stop him, nothing would happen. At this moment, the evil emperor swept up the blood mist behind him and came to Suzimo's side. Suzimo subconsciously looked at her. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to ask something, but he didn't dare to say it. The evil emperor seemed to know what Suzimo wanted to ask and said expressionlessly, "She's dead?" Suzimo's face was deathly pale. He suddenly felt a stabbing pain in his heart. These 3 words were like a sharp blade that pierced through his heart. Pooh! Suzimo spat out a mouthful of blood, looking miserable. He had long guessed this answer, but he was unwilling to believe it. The difference in strength between the Brahma ghost mother and the Brahma ghost mother was too great. How could Daiyu possibly survive? "I've just saved her soul," the evil emperor continued. "I'll give you 2 choices now. First, you can keep her soul by your side, but she won't be able to cultivate, nor will she be able to take revenge. She can only accompany you. Second, I can send her into reincarnation and give her a new life in the great thousand world." Suzimo's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He raised his head and looked at the evil emperor with a trace of doubt in his eyes. Of course, he knew about the reincarnation of souls into the 6 paths of reincarnation. However, the conditions for reincarnation were too harsh. It required an expert whose cultivation realm was much higher than the reincarnated person's to set up a trap in advance to have a chance of success. Furthermore, the reincarnation of souls into the 6 paths of reincarnation was filled with countless dangers and variables. No one knew what would happen. However, according to the evil emperor, she could control this matter and bring Daiyu back to life in the great thousand world. Furthermore, the evil emperor said new life, not reincarnation. The evil emperor said indifferently, "Before this, I couldn't do this. Now that I've recovered some of my strength, I can bring her back to life in the great thousand world." Suzimo thought about it seriously before saying slowly, "I choose the second option." The 2 of them could be together forever with the first option, but it was too unfair and painful for Daiyu. Daiyu's Tao was not obedient. She could not cultivate or take revenge. To her, even if she lived in the form of a soul, what was the point? Daiyu had never depended on anyone in her life. She led the weak butterfly race to rise in the middle world where there were tens of thousands of races. In this epoch, Daiyu was not weaker than anyone, including Suzimo. Daiyu attacked the heavens back then for the middle world and to resist the heavenly court. However, it was also for herself. She wanted to explore the great thousand world and see the vast world. Hearing Suzimo's answer, a trace of admiration flashed in the depths of the evil emperor's eyes. Actually, even if Suzimo chose the first option, she would not be surprised. However, she would feel disappointed. She would also feel wronged for the peerless beauty of the generation, Shuedai. "You might not have heard what I meant," the evil emperor continued. "She will be reborn in the great thousand world, not reincarnated. By rebirth, it means that all traces of this lifetime will be erased. After being reborn in the great thousand world, she can become any of the 10,000 races and cultivate anew. She will also forget everything about this lifetime, including you." When he heard that, Suzimo's heart ached. Gradually, countless images appeared in his mind. The first meeting between the 2 of them. Amidst the falling peach blossoms, the slightly sluggish blood-robed woman brought him to the path of cultivation and opened up a magnificent world. The blood-colored figure that stood in front of countless purple-winged eagles in Songlang mountain range. Severely injured and unconscious, someone left a Siraka flower in his body to replace the divine phoenix bone and change his fate. 2 lines of words were left at the bottom of the dragon burial valley. The dragon phoenix true body was reborn and his bloodline phenomenon condensed. The beautiful figure that haunted his dreams appeared before him once more as she smiled at him. The third gift is me. Dai Yu's rebirth meant that everything between the two of them and all those beautiful memories were about to disappear. You can choose again, the evil emperor said indifferently. Although Su Zimo's heart was pained, he still shook his head and recalled the images and memories of the past. Gradually, he smiled. In this lifetime, she changed my fate for me. In the next lifetime, it's my turn to protect her. When he heard that, the cold evil emperor was slightly moved as well. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo said, "Let her be reborn in the great thousand world. I'll definitely find her." "All right," the evil emperor nodded. "I hope to see you in the great thousand world. If you have any difficulties in ascending to the great thousand world, you can come and look for me with the dreamlike token. It's the white jade pendant that I left for you." Su Zimo seemed to have not heard anything and was still in a daze. Even though he had already made the decision to let the evil emperor help Dai Yu be reborn in the great thousand world, his heart was still filled with reluctance and pain. Chapter 3203. Seeing Su Zimo's state, the evil emperor said lightly, "Let me remind you. Although the war of the heavens has ended, the middle world is still in chaos and danger lurks everywhere. You'd better be careful." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Normally, after the heavenly court was destroyed, the emperors of the middle world would be able to ascend smoothly and the operations of the middle world would return to normal. However, because Wu Dao's original body had attracted a great calamity, the barrier of laws had been broken and a series of unforeseen events had occurred. Dai Yu's death was only one of them. Although there were still many emperors and living beings of various realms left in the heavenly court, without the master of the heavenly court, the situation had changed. The remaining people could not cause much trouble. Moreover, seeing that the heavenly court had been destroyed and the masters of the heavenly court had died, the remaining emperors of the heavenly court had retreated from the battlefield and chosen to ascend to the great thousand world. After this bloody battle, the living beings of the middle world had suffered heavy losses and could no longer fight. Moreover, the heavenly court had been destroyed, and there was no need to continue fighting to the death. The opportunity to ascend to the great thousand world was right in front of them. The emperors planned to cultivate for a while before ascending to the great thousand world. The evil emperor had once said that they had fallen into the middle world because of a great battle that had caused the barrier of the 3 realms to break. Now that the barrier of the 3 realms had been pierced again, it meant that the experts of the great thousand world still had a chance to descend. "Will the masters of the heavenly court return?" Su Zimo asked with a frown. "That won't be the case," the evil emperor said. "The fiend master and ghost mother have already ascended, and their attention will be on them. They won't care about the middle world and—" The evil emperor looked up slightly and glanced at the barrier of laws that had been pierced. "This hole is negligible to the barrier of the 3 realms. It's like a speck of dust. With the power of the laws of heaven and earth, it will quickly repair itself." In fact, it was just as the evil emperor had said. The hole that had been pierced through by the great tribulation became smaller and smaller in this short period of time. It gradually disappeared and once again disappeared into the clouds. When the barrier of laws was restored, the experts of the great thousand world would not be able to descend. Even if the evil emperor's realm had just recovered, once the barrier of laws was restored, as long as she remained in the middle world, her power would still be restricted and suppressed at the great emperor level. If the danger that the evil emperor spoke of did not come from the greater thousand domains, then where did it come from? Su Zimo's eyes inadvertently caught sight of a black paper floating in the battlefield. It was the legendary Book of Life and Death. Wu Dao's true body was struck by the tribulation. His body and the prison-suppressing cauldron were shattered, and his storage bag was destroyed. Almost everything inside had been reduced to dust. Only this piece of black paper was preserved. Fengdu. Su Zimo grabbed the piece of black paper and couldn't help but think of the Master of Hell. He's not dead? The Lord of Hell had once said that no one in this world could kill him. Although Wu Dao's original body's consciousness had once entered the netherworld to patrol, he couldn't find any traces of Fengdu's aura. At that time, the war against the heavens was imminent, so he could only give up temporarily. The evil emperor didn't seem to want to talk too much about the Lord of the Underworld. He simply said, "It's not just him." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly thought of something extremely terrifying. His gaze landed on the Avicii hell that had been pierced through by the heaven realm, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Originally, the Avicii hell that the Avicii Emperor had created with his own flesh and blood was used to imprison the Master of Flame Skies and the Lord of Hell. But now, the Avicii hell had been pierced through. This meant that the Master of Flame Skies and the Lord of Hell had also escaped. Su Zimo's expression turned serious. The evil emperor said, "The Master of Flame Skies has already chosen to be reborn in the greater thousand domains. But the Lord of Hell didn't leave. Instead, he chose to be reborn in Hell. The heavenly court had already been destroyed, and the Lord of Hell had escaped from the Avicii Hell. Of course, he could choose to be reborn in the greater thousand domains. But he chose to stay in Hell. What did he want to do?" The evil emperor said, "I won't be surprised if he does anything in the middle world." Anything that the evil emperor said was naturally not a good thing. If the Lord of Hell was a kind person, he wouldn't have been imprisoned by the Avicii Emperor back then. Moreover, the Lord of Hell had been imprisoned by the Avicii Emperor for so many years. He had been enduring the pain of the Avicii Emperor all the time. One could imagine the hatred and resentment that had accumulated in his heart. The evil emperor couldn't do anything about this. Even if she took action, she wouldn't be able to completely kill the Lord of Hell. The Lord of Hell would be reborn as the Lord of Hell, and the hatred in his heart would be even deeper and heavier. Of course, whether it's Fengdu or the Lord of Hell, they would still need some time to recover their emperor cultivation after being reborn. It's still very difficult for Fengdu to become a great emperor. But to the Lord of Hell, becoming a great emperor is just a matter of time. His Taoist seal is an infernal court. The 9 heavens had been destroyed, and the devil master Brahma Ghost Mother had ascended. The evil emperor wouldn't stay in the middle world. Dayu had perished, and Wu Dao's original body was being pursued by the Great Tribulation. He had lost his senses, and it was most likely that he had perished. Once the Lord of Hell became a great emperor in the path of hell, no one would be able to go against him, from the heavens to the underworld. Thinking of this, Su Zimo realized that although the heavenly court had been destroyed, the greater danger to the middle world was still to come. Once Fengdu and the Lord of Hell made a comeback, the middle world would most likely become a limitless purgatory. Su Zimo muttered softly. In other words, within this period of time, someone has to become a great emperor in the middle world. Only then can we fight against them. This is another variable. The evil emperor said, "That blood butterfly has perished, and the Tao seal has dissipated." Any imperial emperor in the middle world would have a chance to become a great emperor. Hearing this, Su Zimo suddenly thought of another person. This person had never appeared in the entire War of the Heavens. In addition, the War of the Heavens was too tragic, and both of his true bodies were facing immense pressure. He had almost forgotten about this person. Until now, when he heard the evil emperor's words, he was suddenly awakened. The Patriarch of the Academy. When Wu Dao's original body was still around, the Patriarch of the Academy was not even worth mentioning. To him, he was not even a threat. As long as Wu Dao's original body was around, the Patriarch of the Academy would not dare to appear. All these years, the Patriarch of the Academy had only appeared once in great danger. After that, he disappeared again and went into hiding. But now, the situation was different. Wu Dao's original body had fallen into the river Styx, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Dayu had perished. The people who could really threaten the Patriarch of the Academy were no longer around. At the same time, Su Zimo suddenly remembered that the Lord of the Underworld had once said that the Patriarch of the Academy wanted to cooperate with him. This cooperation even moved the Lord of the Underworld, and he was looking forward to it. He even let the Patriarch of the Academy go. Su Zimo had already vaguely guessed what the Patriarch of the Academy was going to do. In the middle world, Dai Yu's Dao seal had dissipated. Now that the heavenly court was no longer obstructing them, the vitality of heaven and earth was rich. After the War of the Heavens, countless treasures were left in the heavenly court, and endless opportunities were nurtured. The treasures and opportunities accumulated over several eras, witnessing the War of the Heavens, the battle between great emperors, the collision of various Tao techniques. These were all incomparably precious experiences. All these karma intertwined together, and it was very likely that it would lead to the birth of the next great emperor in the middle world. Perhaps it would not take long. Chapter 3204. Any emperor in the middle world had the possibility of becoming a great emperor. Of course, this included the Academy Patriarch. Previously, when the Academy Patriarch suddenly appeared and took over the witch race, Su Zimo speculated that the Academy Patriarch had most likely reached the great success of the Emperor realm, or even the great perfection of the Emperor realm. Even if the Academy Patriarch was only at the great success of the Emperor realm at that time, after the destruction of the heavenly court and the endless heaven and earth essence chi turned into rain and covered the 3,000 domains, the Academy Patriarch would definitely be able to break through and reach the great perfection of the Emperor realm. Su Zimo had not yet stepped into the Emperor realm. In this regard, he was one step behind. It was not that his talent was not strong enough, or that he did not have enough opportunities. In fact, his cultivation speed had far exceeded that of his peers. It was just that in the chaotic situation after the War of the Heavens, there were many variables that made time extremely unfavorable for him. Fortunately, whether it was the Lord of the Underworld or the Lord of Hell, it would take some time for them to come back to life and recover to their peak state. Even if the heavenly court was destroyed and endless karma and opportunities descended on the middle world, it would not be easy to become a great emperor. As long as he stepped into the great perfection of the Emperor realm as soon as possible, with the help of the 3 pure jade book and the rich heaven and earth essence chi around the middle world, he could quickly raise his cultivation level and reach the great perfection of the Emperor realm. At that time, it was still unknown who would become the great emperor of the middle world. Of course, as the evil emperor said, this was an unpredictable variable. That dreamlike token, you have to keep it well. Just as Su Zimo was deep in thought, the evil emperor suddenly opened his mouth and said something. Su Zimo subconsciously looked over. At this moment, the evil emperor's eyes seemed to contain some kind of deep meaning. Su Zimo was slightly startled and did not understand for a moment. The dreamlike token that had been emitting warmth during the War of the Heavens had gradually cooled down at this time. Su Zimo was puzzled, and just as he was about to ask, the evil emperor said lightly, "I have to go. See you in the vast 1,000 domains." The evil emperor waved her hand, and the countless beast armies that were lingering in the middle world and the celestial court returned to the abyss under her command, returning to the beast world. After the War of the Heavens, when the Devil Lord and the Brahma Ghost Mother ascended to the greater 1,000 realms, the Ghost Tribe Army and Ashura Army retreated from the middle world and returned to the Ghost World and Ashura realm. The Demon Lord and Brahma Ghost Mother had ascended to the great 1,000 worlds. Even though Great Monarch Araki Takashi and Great Monarch Shuedai had perished, the evil monarch was still alive. They did not dare to be impudent in front of the evil emperor. Before the evil emperor ascended to the greater 1,000 world, he still had to make a trip to the netherworld. Her gaze turned and landed on the many bronze fragments floating in the starry sky. It was the shattered hell-suppressing cauldron, stained with Wu Dao's blood. The evil emperor pondered for a moment, then reached out his sleeve and rolled up the fragments of the prison-suppressing cauldron that were stained with Wu Dao's blood. Seeing this scene, Su Zimo seemed to have sensed something and could not help but ask, "That Wu Dao's true body is not dead?" As long as Wu Dao's true body was not dead, the middle world would not be in any great danger. "I don't know." The evil emperor shook his head. After a pause, the evil emperor said, "Even if he's not dead, it's no different from being dead. All of his aura has been locked down. If he dares to appear, the calamity will descend again, and it will be even more terrifying than this time. He can't help with the crisis of the middle world." Su Zimo was silent. The evil emperor did not say anything else. His body fell into the starry sky abyss and disappeared from the middle world. The large battlefield in the middle world had almost stopped. The heavenly court's emperors saw that the situation was not good and had already ascended. As for the other living beings in the heavenly court, such as the true spirits and the immortal King Fist, they were left behind in the middle world and became the target of public criticism. This was especially so for the evil spirits from the 9 great sins. They already hated the heavenly court's experts to the bone. This kind of hatred was engraved in their bones for generations. The heavenly court and the heavenly court's momentum was gone. They could not resist the encirclement of the many worlds and the 9 great sins. Countless heavenly court living beings fled in all directions. These living beings from the heavenly court and the heavenly court had been high and mighty for many eras. They did not see the races of the middle world as humans. If there was even the slightest disobedience, they would kill and even kill all of them. Over the years, countless worlds had been destroyed by the heavenly court and the heavenly court. Countless races had their bloodlines completely cut off. And in this life, the heavenly court and the heavenly court finally paid the price. In the netherworld, at the foot of the Holding Calf Mountain, the evil emperor looked at the huge whirlpool that was slowly spinning in the abyss. After a while, she waved her hand. A bright red flower flew over from Acheron and landed in her palm. Although the red spider lily can preserve the memories of the previous life, there are too many variables in reincarnation in the Great Thousand World. I'm not sure if this flower is useful. The evil emperor muttered to herself as she placed Dayu's soul into the red spider lily. The evil emperor's spiritual will moved, and the flower closed, protecting Dayu's soul within. She looked at the ancient runes on the 6 regions of the huge whirlpool. She waved her hand gently and sent the red spider lily into one of the regions. The runes on that region corresponded to the heavenly Tao of the 6 paths of reincarnation. After doing that, the evil emperor turned around and went to the Netherworld River through the Netherworld Palace. She headed toward the depths of the Netherworld River, as if she was familiar with everything around her. But when she reached the border between the Netherworld River and the Blood Sea, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. She did not step into the Blood Sea easily. The evil emperor stood there motionlessly, as if waiting for something. After a long time, a dilapidated ancient ship broke through the blood mist and slowly sailed over from the depths of the Blood Sea. It stopped in front of the Netherworld River. There was no one on the ancient ship. The evil emperor pondered for a while. Then, she waved her sleeves and threw the fragments of the confinement cauldron that were stained with Wu Dao's blood into the ancient ship. That dilapidated ancient ship slowly sailed away, once again disappearing into the blood mist, disappearing without a trace. The evil emperor stood there for a long time and bowed slightly toward the depths of the Blood Sea. Then, she left and ascended to the Great Thousand World. In the depths of the Blood Sea, there was a pile of ruins with countless corpses, broken halberds, and broken swords. It was blood-stained and dilapidated, like a desolate island. The blood mist surrounded the ruins, but it could not seep into it. Everything in these ruins had an ancient aura, and it was impossible to tell when they were born. That included the black-robed man with disheveled hair sitting in the ruins. The dilapidated ancient ship stopped at the edge of the ruins, and the black-robed man slowly got up. He walked to the edge of the ruins and stepped into the Blood Sea casually. He grabbed the fragments of the confinement cauldron and threw them beside a weak flame on the ruins. That was Wu Dao's martial soul. After it was reignited, the martial soul's vitality was gradually recovering, even if it was very slow. At this moment, the martial soul's flame seemed to have sensed something, and it burned brighter and brighter. The blood stains on the fragments of the confinement cauldron also glowed with vitality. The fragments of the confinement cauldron, stained with blood, began to draw closer to the martial soul under the guidance of some kind of power. Sk tisk. The black-robed man made a strange sound and muttered, "Tao techniques are really domineering. To refine the confinement cauldron into one's physical body." Chapter 3205. The War of the Heavens had come to an end, but the fighting in the middle worlds had not stopped. Without the protection of emperor experts, Even the heavenly court army could not withstand the joint attack of the experts of the various domains. In the eyes of the experts of the 3,000 domains, these heavenly court beings were not only the existences who had enslaved them, but also a huge treasure trove on each heavenly court being. In the storage bags of these heavenly court beings, there were countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures. These were the price that the heavenly court beings had to pay. Suzimo returned to Heaven Wasteland Domain with serious injuries. In this War of the Heavens, Heaven Wasteland Domain was not affected too much by the Emperor experts, and not many beings below the Emperor realm died. But the hearts of the people of Heaven Wasteland Domain were extremely heavy. Too many great emperors had fallen in this battle. Even Emperor Araki Takashi and Emperor Shuedai had both died. Some old friends of Heaven Wasteland Domain were extremely sad when they saw the death of the human emperor. When they saw Suzimo return, they sighed silently in their hearts. Suzimo and immortal King Linglong had seen their loved ones die with their own eyes. Who could bear such a blow? Lin Lei and Lin Luo accompanied immortal King Linglong, while Feng Cantillon was expressionless, silently guarding by the side. The tiger, Ching Ching, Little Fox, Night Spirit, and Golden Lion also came to Suzimo's side, looking at him worriedly. Yuanzhu and Imo Qing stood not far away, silently watching him. Everyone wanted to say something, but they did not know how to comfort him. "I'm fine." As if feeling everyone's worry for him, Suzimo smiled softly. Ever since he had started cultivating, he had seen far too many parting of life and death. He had also experienced it himself, but it was different from the past. Whether it was Big Brother Su Hong or Yao Shui, after they died, there was no trace of them, and there was no way to find them. Even though he had cultivated to this level, and had even been to the netherworld, there was no way to find them. But Daiyu was different. The evil emperor would help Daiyu reincarnate in the Great Thousand World and obtain a new life. Although Suzimo was sad right now, there was more anticipation in his heart. He looked forward to the day when the two of them could meet again in the Great Thousand World. Even if Daiyu was just an ordinary mortal, he didn't care. He would stay by Daiyu's side to protect her. Perhaps he would choose to bring Daiyu into cultivation, just like what he did in Pingyang Town back then. Of course, ascending to the Great Wide World was not just to find Daiyu. He still wanted revenge. It was not just for Daiyu and the human emperor, but also for the many living beings who had died in the War of the Heavens in this era. It was also for the predecessors who had advanced courageously over the past few epochs. Suzimo wanted to know why the Heavenly Court existed. What exactly is the status and identity of the 9 masters of the Heavenly Courts in the Great Thousand Worlds? Who were the Devil Lord, the Evil Monarch, the Brahma Ghost Mother, and the others? What exactly happened in the Great Thousand World back then? Why would the existence of Wu Dao's original body lead to the great calamity of the Great Thousand World? The root of everything was in the Great Thousand World. All of these questions could only be answered by ascending to the Great Thousand World. Of course, before ascending to the Great Thousand World, he had to solve another crisis. If he guessed correctly, the conspiracy of the Patriarch of the Academy and the Master of the Netherworld was a huge disaster to the Middle World and all living beings. And on top of this disaster, there was now the Master of Hell who was about to make a comeback. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed since the War of the Heavens. Over the years, most of the living beings in the heavenly courts had been encircled and annihilated. The war in the 3,000 worlds had gradually subsided, and the living beings of the various races were recuperating. The cultivation environment of the middle world was far better than before, and the various races ushered in an unprecedented era of glory. The resources and treasures of the former middle world that had lasted for several eras had been seized by the heavenly courts. The heavenly courts were broken, and countless seeds were scattered. The once extinct immortal herbs and spirit plants grew anew in various parts of the 3,000 worlds. In the vast starry sky, there were countless treasures hidden, and countless opportunities were nurtured. It should be known that even for people with extraordinary talent, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to break through the barrier of cultivation level without opportunities. After the heavenly courts were broken, it gave these geniuses the best cultivation environment. After the War of the Heavens, all living beings had a clear feeling that everyone's cultivation speed was obviously much faster. Breaking through to the next realm was also easier than before. In just 100 years, there were more than a dozen quasi-emperor experts in the 3,000 worlds who had been stuck for hundreds of thousands of years who had broken through and stepped into the emperor realm. Before this, it was simply unimaginable. Without the heavenly court's blockade, as long as one stepped into the emperor realm, he could choose to ascend to the great 1,000 worlds at any time. In the past 100 years, there had been many emperor realm experts who had chosen to ascend to the great 1,000 worlds one after another. Emperor realm experts needed to absorb Genesis Chi to cultivate and strengthen and perfect the world. And the Genesis Chi in the middle world was very little. Only in the great 1,000 worlds could emperor realm experts cultivate better and faster and improve further. Moreover, experts who had cultivated to the emperor realm all had strong Tao hearts and great ambitions. They all wanted to go to a wider world to see and explore. Before many emperor realm experts ascended, they would choose to come to the Heaven Wasteland domain to visit Suzimo and say goodbye to him. Everyone knew that Suzimo was Araki Takashi. And the reason why they had the chance to ascend to the great 1,000 worlds was also because of the battle and sacrifice of Emperor Araki Takashi and Emperor Shuedai. The scene of Emperor Araki Takashi preaching Tao to the common people had a huge impact on their hearts. That kind of shock was still unforgettable. Wu Dao's method had benefited countless living beings in the world. Although the current Araki Takashi was only a peak immortal king, the Emperor Realm experts still had great respect for him. Emperor North Kuin and Emperor South Pong left and ascended to the great 1,000 worlds. The Lord of the Flower Domain also chose to ascend to the great 1,000 worlds. One after another, the Emperor Realm experts who had fought in the War of the Heavens left one after another. The many surviving Emperor Realm experts of the Sword World also ascended to the great 1,000 worlds. The old man with the iron crown seemed to have a premonition and did not leave. In the current Heaven Wasteland domain, there were not many Emperor Realm experts. Almost all of them came from the Rakshasa race in the Nine Serenities' sinful grounds, and there were no peak Emperor Realm experts. But because of the War of the Heavens and Araki Takashi's preaching, the Heaven Wasteland domain had an unshakable position in the 3,000 worlds. Even the Light World, Sky Eye World, and other superworlds that had a grudge with the Heaven Wasteland domain did not dare to find trouble with the Heaven Wasteland domain. Back then, in the later stages of the War of the Heavens, many Emperor Realm experts of the 3,000 worlds were influenced and stepped forward to fight against the Heavenly Court. The scene was too shocking for them. Who could guarantee that if they found trouble with the Heaven Wasteland domain now, the experts of these worlds would not stand up again? Chapter 3206. During the War of the Heavens, Suzimo's 5 grotto heavens were nourished and had just broken through to the peak of the grotto heaven realm. Over the past 100 years, his cultivation had also improved greatly, but it was impossible for him to break through again. Although the combat power of the 5 grotto heavens was terrifying and invincible among those of the same level, it was several times more difficult to transform all 5 grotto heavens and become a quasi-emperor. One day, 100 years later, Suzimo suddenly left Heaven Wasteland domain without saying goodbye. No one knew where he went. Everyone in Heaven Wasteland domain noticed this and were a little worried. Over the years, Suzimo did not seem abnormal when he was with everyone. He talked and laughed and did not seem to be affected much. However, everyone in Heaven Wasteland domain knew that Suzimo was not in a good state. Whenever he was alone, Suzimo would often sit in a daze, not talking or cultivating, looking disappointed. Will something happen to him in this state? Imo Ching frowned slightly, a trace of worry in her beautiful eyes. Suzimo's sudden departure caused some old friends of Heaven Wasteland domain and a few experts who were temporarily in charge of Heaven Wasteland domain to gather together to discuss this matter. There shouldn't be any danger. Feng Cantillon shook his head and said, "In the War of the Heavens, there are not many people in this world who can hurt him. To be precise, other than great emperors and peak imperial emperors, there was nothing to be afraid of. Even if Suzimo faced a peerless imperial emperor, he still had the power to fight." Lin Xuanji said, "It's good to let him go out alone. Maybe he can relieve the pain in his heart. He left without saying goodbye and left alone. I'm afraid it's not just to relieve some pain, Elder Xian suddenly said. He might want to use himself as bait to lure someone out. Everyone looked at each other and thought of this person almost at the same time. Could he have already ascended to the vast thousand domains? Yang Ruoxu asked. No. Elder Xian shook his head and said. With certainty, he's very ambitious. He won't ascend to the greater world so quietly. Among everyone present, Elder Xian understood the patriarch of the academy the most. Yunju frowned and said, based on the current information, the patriarch of the academy is likely to have reached the perfected imperial realm. If he finds Zimo, Zimo might be in danger. There's definitely danger, Elder Xian said, but with Zimo's methods, the academy patriarch should not be able to kill him. After all, during the War of the Heavens, Su Zimo had single-handedly held back 50 peak imperial emperors, including a top-notch expert like young Master Xian Tian. Lin Xuanji said, but even if you can lure the patriarch of the academy out, you won't be able to kill him. Don't forget about Iron Crown Sword Emperor, Elder Xian said. At the mention of this person, everyone's eyes lit up. Although the Iron Crown Sword Emperor's cultivation level did not increase, after the baptism of the War of the Heavens, his combat strength had increased by another level. It could be said that the Iron Crown Sword Monarch was one of the cultivators with the highest chance of becoming a great emperor after the Blood Butterfly Monarch. Elder Xian said, the Iron Crown Sword Emperor did not ascend to the vast thousand domains because of the patriarch of the academy. For the sake of that stupid patriarch, why did he have to be so secretive? Why did he hide it from us? Tiger complained. Immortal King Ling Long said indifferently, the more people who know about this, the more the heavenly secrets will be revealed. He naturally won't appear when he senses danger. Over the years, Immortal King Ling Long had also lost a lot of weight. Is there a need to take the patriarch of the academy so seriously? Lin Xuanji did not think so. He only knew a little about the patriarch of the academy from the mouths of others. It seemed that he only had a strong deduction ability and was very smart, but there was nothing else. Hearing this, Elder Xian glanced at Lin Xuanji and said, over the years, the opponents who looked down on him are all dead. Elder Xian and the patriarch of the academy had known each other for many years, but they had all been schemed against and almost lost their lives. It was only because of the establishment of the Heaven Wasteland domain, the reappearance of the immortal realm, and the breaking of the seal of the 9 heavens, that he was able to survive. Putting everything else aside, just his tolerance alone is already better than many people, Elder Xian said. Elder Xian said, there are many ambitious people, but there are also many who can endure silently. However, there are very few people like him who are ambitious and can endure silently. Tolerance? What kind of ability is that? Lin Xuanji pursed his lips. Do you think it's easy to tolerate? Elder Xian said, if a person can tolerate to the extreme, it means that this person is extremely rational and calm. He can restrain his desires, suppress his anger, and even cast aside all emotions and desires. He will not be disturbed by them and will be able to make the most powerful judgment for himself. Ask yourself, can you do it? Lin Xuanji fell silent. Behind tolerance, one had to restrain one's desires, suppress one's anger, and cut off all emotions and desires. Not to mention that he could not do it. There was probably no one else in the world who could do it apart from the patriarch of the academy. Elder Xian said, he won't do anything unless he's more than 90% confident. In the War of the Heavens, Araki Takashi and the Shuedai twin emperors died. The Sword World, Heaven Wasteland Domain, and Great Wasteland Domain were all severely injured. Zimo was severely injured, but he did not appear even under such circumstances. At that time, the evil emperor was still around. If the patriarch of the academy acted rashly, he might have been killed. Tiger could not help but say, that *T patriarch is too good at hiding. Didn't he fail twice even though he's so powerful? Lin Xuanji raised his brows and asked. Elder Xian shook his head. To be precise, those 2 times can't be considered as failures. The first time he attacked Zimo, He was indeed flawless and treated everyone as pawns. However, he failed because of the appearance of the Emperor's tomb. Behind the Emperor's tomb is the master of the underworld. It's reasonable that he couldn't divine it. Moreover, he didn't fail completely that time. At least he obtained the complete Forbidden Secret Manual, the 3 Pure Jade booklet. He used it to break through the barrier and enter the Emperor realm. His cultivation improved tremendously. At this point, Elder Xian looked at everyone and said, everyone thought that he wanted the creation of Qinglian. However, he only wanted an opportunity. The creation of Qinglian was that opportunity. In the end, although he did not obtain the Green Lotus of Good Fortune, with the 3 Pure Ones Jade booklet in hand, this opportunity was considered to have been obtained. After pausing for a while, Elder Xian continued, the second failure was because of the existence of Wu Dao's real body. That existence even attracted the heavenly punishment of the greater world. It was beyond the common sense of the heavenly Dao. It was not affected by karma and was not involved in the mysteries of the heavens. Naturally, he could not divine it. Even so, he still escaped. Hearing this, everyone gradually realized how difficult it was to deal with the patriarch of the academy. Everyone had seen how terrifying Wu Dao's real body was with their own eyes. There were not many people in the world who could escape from the hands of Wu Dao's real body. Although the patriarch of the academy had failed, he had survived from the hands of Wu Dao's real body. This could be considered the greatest success. Now, Wu Dao's real body had died, but the patriarch of the academy was still alive. It was hard to say who would win in the battle between the two of them. He was able to endure and was quite bold. When Wu Dao's real body was still around, he still dared to take the risk and appeared to take over the witch world. Then, he went into hiding again. Behind this was the ability to see through the mysteries of the heavens and make accurate calculations. Elder Xian sighed faintly and said, if the patriarch of the academy is willing to take action now and chase after Zimo, this situation is still considered good. Although a peak imperial emperor is strong, he is not invincible. I'm worried about another situation. Chapter 3207. What are you worried about? Lin Xuanji asked subconsciously. Elder Xian remained silent. The bystanders looked at each other and were also somewhat puzzled. Although Desolate Marshal and Shui Dai Emperors were dead, given the strength of the Heaven Wasteland Domain, Great Wasteland Domain, Sword Realm, and Blood Ape Realm, no matter how strong the sect master of the academy was, they could still fight him if they joined forces. Only immortal King Ling Long said slowly, proving his Dao as a great emperor. Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. Impossible. Lin Xuanji jumped up and frowned. Proving one's Dao as a great emperor is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. There have only been a few people since ancient times. At this point, Lin Xuanji couldn't continue. He realized that this era was different from the previous eras. In this era, the heavenly court was broken and the middle world was no longer sealed by the 9 heavens. The cultivation environment of the middle world was completely different, comparable to when the middle world was first born. Moreover, there were countless treasures and opportunities accumulated by the heavenly court over the previous eras. It wouldn't be surprising if someone else proved their Dao as a great emperor. I don't think so. Yun Ting frowned. The Academy's patriarch's cultivation has stagnated at the Grotto Heaven realm for at least 100,000 years. His talent isn't top-notch. Does he have a chance to prove his Dao as a great emperor? Yun Ting had a say in terms of cultivation talent. Other than Su Zimo, there weren't many people who could surpass him in terms of cultivation speed. There's only one great emperor in the middle world. Any emperor has a chance, including him, Elder Xian said. Also, your understanding of cultivation talent is a little one-sided. Cultivation speed is only one way to show one's cultivation talent. It's not everything. The Shui Dai Empress was unknown before she reached the Grotto Heaven realm. She only had 5 heavenly tribulations. Ordinary people would think that her talent was at the bottom of the valley. But what happened later? Everyone knew that the blood butterfly had become a legend. Elder Xian said, actually, no matter how talented a person is, if they don't have any opportunities and only rely on closed-door cultivation, their achievements will be limited. She was cautious and didn't obtain any opportunities in those years. That's why her cultivation didn't improve much. Yun Ting was silent. In truth, in the cultivation environment of the dimensional realm, it was normal for the king realm to stagnate for 100,000 years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. Even if it was him, without any fortuitous encounters, it was impossible for his cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds just by cultivating in seclusion. Back then, at the Divine Firmament Immortal Gathering, he had lost to Su Zimo and resolutely chose to leave the heaven realm. In fact, it was because he had realized where his bottleneck was. Heading to the Sword World was also to search for greater opportunities. Actually, the Patriarch of the Academy is extremely powerful among those of the same level. At least I am far from being his match. I have seen it when I received the inheritance of Xian V of the Ninth Heaven. Immortal King Ling Long said, but for hundreds of thousands of years, the Patriarch of the Academy has rarely made a move. His presence is very low. Even in the heaven realm, not many experts pay attention to him. Apart from Elder Xian, only Immortal King Ling Long had witnessed the true strength of the Patriarch of the Academy. Immortal King Ling Long said, he's ambitious, skilled in politics, and observant of human nature. However, he keeps a low profile, forbearance, and restrains his sharpness. It's even to the extent that all of you would unconsciously look down on him. And when all of you look down on him, you will be careless, relaxed, and pay the price. This is also where he's smart. Even Yang Ruoxu, who came from the Heaven and Earth Academy, broke out in cold sweat when he heard this. He had cultivated in the academy for many years, but only now did he realize that he knew nothing about this Patriarch of the Academy. Feng Cantillon sighed and said, sometimes, one has to admit that in the cruel and dark chaotic world, people like the Patriarch of the Academy will often become the final winner. This group of people cared about too many things in their hearts. They also had their own beliefs and people they cared about. As for the Patriarch of the Academy, he didn't care about anything except himself. In this era, the heavenly court had been shattered, and an unprecedented situation had appeared. The Patriarch of the Academy's patience had indeed reaped unimaginable rewards. The right time, opportunity, and luck were all on his side. If he could take another step forward and become an emperor, he would really become the final winner that Feng Cantillon spoke of. Su Zimo also saw this point, which was why he used himself as bait to lure the Patriarch of the Academy out in advance. The Domain Lord is also worried about another thing. Sitting at the side, Princess Yufei, who had been quiet all this time, suddenly spoke. After the War of the Heavens, the army of Hell had split into two. Some stayed in Heaven Wasteland Domain and continued to listen to Su Zimo's orders. Princess Yufei was one of them, and more of the creatures of Hell seemed to have sensed something and returned to Hell Domain. Princess Yufei said, the Avicii Great Hell has been shattered, and the Lord of Hell has been reborn in the Hell Domain. I'm afraid that this will be detrimental to the middle world in the future. The evil emperor had only mentioned this to Su Zimo, and others didn't know about it. Hearing this, everyone's heart trembled, and their expressions changed greatly. The Lord of Hell had been reborn. Lin Lei asked, those lords of the heavenly court have already died, and his greatest enemy, the Emperor of Infinity, has also died. Why does he still want to deal with the middle world? Feng Cantillon said, although the Emperor of Infinity has died, his successor is still alive. Su Zimo's two true bodies had the Prajna Nirvana Sutra and the prison-suppressing cauldron. He had also once controlled the Avicii Great Hell, and could be considered to have received the complete inheritance of the Emperor of Infinity. The Yasha King of Fear said, the Lord of Hell has a savage nature and is extremely bloodthirsty. After being imprisoned by the Emperor of Infinity for so long, he had to endure the pain of infinity at all times. Now that he has been reborn, he will definitely take revenge and be even more savage. Even if it was an ordinary person, after being imprisoned for so many years, their temperament would have changed greatly. Moreover, the Lord of Hell was originally a savage and bloodthirsty person. It was not surprising that he would vent his anger on the creatures of the middle world. Sigh. Elder Xian looked worried and sighed. The Lord of Hell was an expert at the level of a great emperor. Once he returned, no one in the middle world would be able to defeat him. The Yasha King of Fear said, "There's also the Lord of Hell. He might not be dead." Everyone was shocked again. The Lord of Hell, who wanted to bury the heavens and refine all creatures, was not dead. Although it was much easier for the creatures of the middle world to cultivate, their overall strength was not as strong as it was 100 years ago. This was because most of the emperors in this generation had chosen to ascend to the greater world. There were not many emperors left. As long as the Lord of Hell and the Lord of Hell were still alive, the middle world would not be able to withstand it, let alone these two terrifying existences. The Yasha King of Fear said, "I suggest that you all ascend to the greater world as soon as possible after becoming emperors. This might be the only way for us to survive." Everyone in Tianhuang shook their heads when they heard this. They knew that the middle world was likely to face a huge disaster. Why would they abandon everything and turn a blind eye to the calamity of the creatures behind them and choose to ascend to the greater world? Those who could gather in this hall all had something they wanted to protect. The Yasha King of Fear did not try to persuade them anymore. After interacting with them over the years, he had already understood this group of people around him. And these people were also gradually changing him. Perhaps he would not leave. Chapter 3208. Time passed, and the sun and moon changed. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed since the War of the Heavens. The heavenly court was shattered, opportunities were everywhere, and Yuan Qi was rich. After the era of the two emperors, the middle worlds ushered in an unprecedented era full of vitality. It had only been 1,000 years, but the 3,000 realms had already experienced a drastic change, with each passing day and the moon changing. Wu Dao had been passed down. All living beings born in the past 1,000 years would attempt to cultivate martial arts. Naturally, they would be able to sense the spirit contained within martial arts. The beings of the 10,000 races who had witnessed and experienced the War of the Heavens felt this spirit even more strongly. Although great Emperor Rocky Takashi had died, the fire seed of Wu Dao's spirit had been planted. The spirits of the 10,000 races who had been suppressed and enslaved for several eras were obviously gradually recovering. Even the old man with the iron crown could feel that not only the sword domain, heaven wasteland domain, and other domains who had participated in the War of the Heavens, but also the other domains, there were more and more hot-blooded and heroic men emerging. The middle worlds were becoming better and better. On this day, the old man with the iron crown returned to heaven wasteland domain. Immortal King Ling Long, Feng Cantian, and the others appeared. Over the years, the old man with the iron crown had been secretly following Su Zimo around, waiting for the Academy Patriarch to appear. Now that the old man with the iron crown had suddenly returned, no one knew what the outcome of this matter was. He never appeared, right? Elder Xin asked. The old man with the iron crown nodded with a solemn expression. As long as the Academy Patriarch was not eliminated, he would always be a hidden danger. Senior, why are you back? The little fox asked with a worried expression. Su Zimo was alone. Without the protection of the old man with the iron crown, he might still encounter danger. Zimo asked me to come back and take the last step, the old man with the iron crown said. He probably guessed that the Academy Patriarch would not appear. If we want to solve this hidden danger, there is another way, which is to prove our Tao before him. If the old man with the iron crown could prove his Tao before the Patriarch, the Academy Patriarch would not be a threat. Given the character of the Patriarch of the Academy, he might not even show up and directly ascend to the vast thousand world. The reason why the Patriarch of the Academy did not appear previously might be because he deduced that you were protecting Zimo and was wary of him. Feng Cantian muttered. Now that you have left, the Patriarch of the Academy might take action. The old man with the iron crown smiled faintly and said, if he dares to show himself, that place is the best. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They all understood the meaning behind the old man's words. Zimo had a breakthrough? Feng Cantian quickly asked. The elder with the iron crown nodded and said, he has already become a quasi-emperor. So fast? Feng Tian was speechless. One had to know that 1,000 years ago, just like Su Zimo, he had just ascended to the perfected grotto heaven stage. Even though the heavenly court had been destroyed, the surrounding heaven-earth essence chi was much denser than before. Even so, it was still extremely difficult to make any progress in the past 1,000 years. Even with his talent, he had yet to become a quasi-emperor. On the other hand, Su Zimo had cultivated 5 grotto heavens and required far more heaven-earth essence chi than him. Who would have thought that Su Zimo would become a quasi-emperor before him? Feng Tian nodded slightly and felt gratified. He said, if that's the case, Zimo must have obtained many fortuitous encounters in the outside world. Fortuitous encounters. At the mention of this, the old man with the iron crown hesitated for a moment and said, it can't be considered fortuitous encounters. His condition is a little strange. Even I can't see through it. Sometimes, he just sits there quietly in a daze. I don't know what he is thinking about, but not long after, his body will emit an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation. Even I feel a little shocked by this energy. Everyone looked at each other in shock. What kind of energy could make the old man with the iron crown feel shocked? He might be comprehending some kind of forbidden technique. The old man with the iron crown pondered and said, however, his cultivation realm is not high enough and he can't unleash the true forbidden technique. Normally, one would need to reach the emperor realm to have the chance to comprehend forbidden techniques. However, Su Zimo's situation was very different from others. Others had only witnessed or experienced the War of the Heavens. Imperial Emperor experts like the old man with the iron crown had at most fought with the heavenly court's imperial emperors. However, Wu Dao's original body had fought against the various heavenly court's masters in the War of the Heavens back then. The two true bodies were mentally connected. Even though Su Zimo had already lost the perception of Wu Dao's original body, the situation of the battle back then was already reflected in his mind. This was a battle between the top experts. This was a battle between great emperors. Although he was only a peak king, he had the experience of fighting against various great emperors. This kind of experience was the most precious experience and also the greatest fortuitous encounter. The dazzling Dao techniques were contained in the battle between Wu Dao's original body and the various heavenly court's masters. Recalling that battle, Su Zimo also tried to comprehend the Dao and Dao techniques that appeared in that battle. This kind of memory was not something that he witnessed, but something that he personally experienced. No one was closer than him and felt the impact and baptism of those powerful Dao techniques more deeply than him. The old man with the iron crown continued, after he became a quasi-emperor, I was still a little worried. After all, there is a huge difference between a quasi-emperor and a great emperor. However, later on, when I wanted to continue following him, I could no longer find any traces of him. Hearing this, everyone was relieved. Even the old man with the iron crown had lost track of him. In this world, apart from the great emperors, there was probably no one who could threaten Su Zimo. Feng Tian said in a low voice, after all, Zimo is the only 12th grade creation in the world, Qinglian. He has also cultivated 5 unprecedented grotto heavens. With his current cultivation, if he can step into the great emperor realm, he might be able to fight against a great emperor. It's too difficult. The old man with the iron crown shook his head. After all, a great emperor had risen to another level. Even if the old man with the iron crown knew that his combat strength was far greater than 1,000 years ago, he still had no chance of winning against a great emperor. Moreover, Su Zimo had just stepped into the great emperor realm. Since ancient times, only great Emperor Rocky Takashi had been able to fight against a true great emperor at the initial stage of the great emperor realm. Moreover, Su Zimo had cultivated 5 grotto heavens. If he wanted to step into the great emperor realm, there was a bottleneck that was difficult to break through. Zimo can support 5 grotto heavens, but he can't support 5 worlds. This is too taxing on his primordial spirit. Not to mention him, even I can't bear it. Only by fusing 5 grotto heavens into one can he evolve a world and step into the great emperor realm. The old man with the iron crown said, however, the 5 grotto heavens nurture 5 different Dao techniques. It's almost impossible to fuse these Tao techniques into one world. Not to mention fusing 5 grotto heavens with the grotto heavens that Su Zimo had cultivated. Fusing 2 grotto heavens would probably cause them to explode and collapse immediately. Immortal King Ling Long said, Qinglian originated from the Great Thousand Worlds. This might be the key to his breakthrough. Chapter 3209. In the depths of the underworld river, in a corner of the ruins at the center of the Blood Sea, Wu Dao's original body lay on a pile of broken battle armor corpses, staring at the gray sky above his head, motionless. It took him 1,000 years to completely reconstruct his body, restore his vitality, and wake up. The injuries this time were too serious. He even thought that he had died. The last memory of Wu Dao's original body was that he escaped into the Blood Sea. After his consciousness sank into darkness, he seemed to see a cluster of fire, which made his soul feel a trace of warmth. It was only a few days ago that he gradually woke up. After the reconstruction, his body and bloodline were clearly different from before. Wu Dao's original body sensed that he had integrated the prison-suppressing cauldron into his bloodline. The prison-suppressing cauldron was not only an Emperor divine weapon, but also contained the blood and souls of the 4 great sacred beasts. It was of great help to his body, bloodline, and soul recovery. It was just that the Great Tribulation was too terrifying. His martial universe and Yuanwu world had been reduced to dust. It would most likely take a long time for him to recover. What made him feel both gratified and surprised was that there was extremely rich Genesis Qi in the surroundings of the ruins. Normally speaking, only the Great Thousand Domains could produce Genesis Qi. How could there be such rich Genesis Qi in the ruins? Or was there some connection between the ruins and the Great Thousand Domains? So far, his body was still extremely weak, and he had almost no strength. It was extremely difficult for him to turn over and sit up. Wu Dao's original body was not in a hurry. Since he had already woken up, and there was such rich Genesis Qi around him, he would definitely be able to recover and even go further. He swept his gaze around, and it fell on the black-robed man sitting at the edge of the Blood Sea not far away. If nothing unexpected happened, it should be this black-robed man's doing that he was able to survive and be brought here. Wu Dao's original body was not surprised that there was someone in the depths of the Blood Sea. He had thought of this before falling into the Blood Sea and losing consciousness. The first time he crossed the underworld river, he had seen a dilapidated ancient ship next to the cluster of fire. And the second time he was chased by the heavenly tribulation of the Great Thousand Domains. When he arrived above the Blood Sea, the dilapidated ancient ship next to the cluster of fire had disappeared. The entire sea of blood was deathly still, without a single ripple. If there was no one around, the dilapidated ancient ship wouldn't have moved. Not long after he woke up, Wu Dao's original body had asked about the black-robed man's identity. However, the black-robed man didn't respond. He just sat beside the Blood Sea, as if he didn't want to pay attention to him, as if he didn't hear anything. Wu Dao asked several times, but received no response. Thus, Wu Dao's main body didn't insist any further. Even if the black-robed man didn't say anything, he could probably guess something. The Nether River was connected to the Netherworld and the 4 paths of hell, and the center of the Nether River was surrounded by a sea of blood. In the depths of the Blood Sea, there was another ruin. The black-robed man in the ruins was very likely related to the Devil Master, the Evil Emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother. The black-robed man might be the master of the heavenly Tao or the human Tao, or he might have other identities. However, Wu Dao's original body was puzzled as to why this black-robed man had never appeared in the War of the Heavens for several eras. Neither the Devil Master nor the Evil Emperor mentioned this person. Just a drop of blood in the Blood Sea could create a weapon like the Netherworld Treasure Mirror, which helped him withstand the impact of a heavenly tribulation. How did the surrounding sea of blood form? Where did this pile of corpses and broken halberds come from? The strength of this black-robed man was unfathomable. He was probably not inferior to the Devil Master and the Evil Emperor. 1,000 years ago, the barrier between the 3 realms shattered. Why didn't this black-robed man leave and go to the Greater Thousand World? Why did he save him? All kinds of doubts lingered in the heart of Wu Dao's original body. As he thought, he waited patiently, absorbing the vitality around him, slowly healing his body, resting, and waiting for his recovery. The Infernal Court. The original Infernal Court was dilapidated and incomplete, causing the creatures of Infernal Court to be unable to break through to the Emperor realm. However, 1,000 years ago, the Lord of Hell returned, and the Infernal Court began to rapidly repair. Now, it had recovered to its original state. The strength of the Infernal Court was unprecedentedly powerful. On this day, a dark shadow descended in the sky above the Infernal Court. Many of the Infernal Court's imperial emperors did not notice. Only a figure lying in the depths of the 9 springs of hell suddenly opened his eyes and slowly floated out of the water, his figure flickering. In the next moment, this person had already arrived in the sky above the Infernal Court. Fengdu, what's the matter? The Lord of Hell looked at the dark shadow in the sky and raised his eyebrows. Misty, your strength recovered very quickly, Fengdu praised. At this time, the Lord of Hell had already stepped into the Emperor realm. Under normal circumstances, even if the Lord of Hell came back from the dead, his cultivation base could not recover so quickly. Because the barrier between the 3 realms shattered, although the time was very short, it also caused the Lord of Hell's cultivation base to skyrocket, greatly reducing the time it took to recover to the peak. Fengdu said, according to this trend, you will be able to return to the peak in another 1,000 years or so? Almost. The Lord of Hell nodded slightly. He was different from others. For the creatures of the middle world, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to become a great emperor. There were countless barriers in the middle, but for the Lord of Hell, he did not need to cultivate any path. He only needed to recuperate, and his combat power would gradually recover until he reached the upper limit of the middle world and reached the level of a great emperor. This time, you chose to be reborn in the Infernal Court. It must be for revenge, right? Fengdu asked. At the mention of this, a hint of gloominess flashed across the Lord of Hell's eyes. He said slowly, Avicii has imprisoned me for so long. I have to give something in return. What are your plans? Fengdu asked. I want to destroy Buddha. Any ancient books related to Buddhism in the middle world will be burned. Any creature that cultivates Buddhism will have to die. At the mention of this, the Lord of Hell's eyes glowed with a bloody light, and his murderous aura was surging. Only crazy revenge and bloody massacre could vent the anger and resentment in his heart all these years. Even in the Great Thousand World, he had never suffered such torment and pain. Everything that had to do with the Emperor of Infinity and the Dharma of Buddhism would vanish from this world. Haha. Fengdu was not surprised by the Lord of Hell's madness. He only chuckled and asked, You have been imprisoned for so long. Is it enough to just destroy Buddha? The Lord of Hell looked at him and raised his eyebrows slightly. Fengdu said, Before the War of the Heavens, a cultivator from the middle world came to find me and wanted to work with me. How can an ant from the middle world be worthy of working with you? Would you be interested in him? The Lord of Hell laughed disdainfully. This person's suggestion is very interesting. Fengdu said, at that time, his suggestion was only a slight possibility. There was no hope. However, the outcome of the War of the Heavens 1,000 years ago was beyond everyone's expectations. Not only was the heavenly court destroyed, but the lords of the heavenly court returned to the Great Thousand World. Even the 2 great emperors, Araki Takashi and Shuedai, died. All of this was more perfect than what he had predicted. Fengdu's eyes shone brightly. It was obvious that he was extremely excited. What does that person want to do? The Lord of Hell frowned. Work with me to rebuild the heavenly court. Fengdu said word by word. Chapter 32:10. Re-establish the heavenly court? The Lord of Hell smiled faintly and said, This person doesn't have much foresight. He only wants to rule the middle world. The Lord of Hell was obviously not interested in re-establishing the heavenly court. He chose to be reborn in the infernal world, but it was only a temporary stay. After stirring up a storm of blood in the 3,000 worlds, he would ascend to the greater world. Of course not. Feng Du said, he will choose to ascend to the greater world. But before that, he will help me re-establish the heavenly court. Moreover, from the moment the heavenly court is re-established, the living beings of the middle world will have to obtain the heavenly court's approval if they want to ascend to the greater world. Moreover, he promised me that after the heavenly court is established, he will not stay in the middle world for too long. He will ascend to the greater world. When that time comes, I will be the new lord of the heavenly court. The underworld and the heavenly court will be under my control. I will become the unprecedented lord of the heavens and earth, who will rule over all races. Feng Du was very excited when he mentioned this. He paused for a while and said, "You know that I can't ascend to the greater world. So what I want to do is to control everything in the middle world." The Lord of Hell said, "Your situation is special. It is difficult for you to prove your Tao. If someone proves their Tao in the middle world and becomes a great emperor, they can overthrow the heavenly court. Your so-called Lord of the heavens and earth will not last long." No. Feng Du smiled evilly and said, "After re-establishing the heavenly court, the first thing I want to do is to enslave the living beings of the middle world." Oh? The Lord of Hell looked around. Feng Du said slowly, "The heavenly court in the past only sealed the middle world and built a prison to enslave and imprison the bodies of the living beings of the middle world. What I want to do is to use the curse of Yin Shang to control the emperors of the living beings of the middle world. I want to enslave and control their souls, spirits, and even consciousness. Through these emperors, I can control the living beings of the 3,000 worlds." Feng Du was very experienced in this aspect. Back then, he used the curse of Yin Shang to control a small number of emperors. He used both kindness and power to control the Dragon World, Wudong World, and many other worlds. Feng Du smiled sinisterly and said, "Enslaving the corporeal bodies of all living beings is only the lowest level method. What I want to do is to enslave everything about them. The thoughts of the living beings of every race will be under my influence. Even if someone has achieved the martial monarch realm, they will still have to obey my orders." Even the Lord of Hell, who was a cruel and bloodthirsty person, felt a chill run down his spine when he heard this. Such methods were even more vicious than the 9 heavens. "There's a problem here." The Lord of Hell suddenly said, "That person proposed this cooperation before the War of the Heavens. In fact, the possibility of success is very low. He didn't know the outcome of this generation's War of the Heavens. He also didn't know that Araki Takashi and Shuedai would die. He also didn't know that I would return. This also means that if the two of you want to join forces to establish the heavenly court, he will have to prove his Tao and become a grand emperor of a middle world. The possibility of that happening is also very low. He has no confidence at all. The reason he proposed this cooperation with you is most likely because he's using you." The King of Hell pointed out the crux of the matter. Feng Du was not surprised. He chuckled and said, "Of course, I know that he's using me. However, even if there's only a glimmer of hope, I'm willing to give him a chance and gamble on him. Therefore, after that meeting, I gave you the heavenly burial scripture and many cultivation resources, as well as treasures of heaven and earth, so that you can help him with his cultivation and cultivation." The Lord of Hell looked at Feng Du with a faint smile and asked, "Didn't you do anything to him and leave a mark on him?" "There's no need for that." Feng Du smiled and said, "This person is very smart. Even if he proves his Tao and becomes a grand emperor, he will still have to be respectful to me. This person is very ambitious. He's decisive and patient. He's ruthless and heartless. If he can ascend to the great thousand world, he won't be a nobody. You should be able to use him." "Oh." The Lord of Hell was surprised and said, "It's not easy to get such an evaluation from you." Feng Du said, "This person came to me that day and analyzed many possible scenarios of the War of the Heavens. He's very meticulous and can see through people's hearts. He's good at politics. He's worth using." "Why did you come to me this time?" the Lord of Hell asked. Feng Du said, "Since you've been reborn in hell, there's no need for me to wait for him to prove his Tao. After 1,000 years, when you become a grand emperor, you can help me rebuild the heavenly court." I don't know how long it'll take for him to achieve his Tao. The sooner the better. If it's too late, I'm afraid there will be other changes. Heh. The Lord of Hell laughed disdainfully and asked, what kind of variables can there be? Araki Takashi and Shuedai are dead. More than half of the imperial emperors in the middle world have ascended. Their strength is greatly reduced. Are you worried that someone will prove his Tao and become a grand emperor again? That's only one of the reasons. Fengdu seemed to have thought of something and his face turned gloomy. He said slowly, in fact, Araki Takashi hasn't completely died. He still has a real body in the middle world. Although this real body's realm is not high enough, its potential is not to be underestimated. If he cultivates to the great circle of the Grand Emperor realm, it will be very troublesome. Why? The Lord of Hell raised his eyebrows and asked, can a great circle of the Grand Emperor realm defeat a Grand Emperor? It's highly possible. Fengdu said, Araki Takashi's real body was only at the great circle of the Grotto Heaven realm during the War of the Heavens, but it showed the combat power of a Grand Emperor realm. In addition, his real body is the 12th grade Qinglian. You know the origin of this Qinglian. The Lord of Hell heard this and his expression changed. He asked, the Qinglian of the creation? Yes. Fengdu nodded. The Qinglian of the creation is in his body. The Lord of Hell murmured and then looked at the river Styx. He was deep in thought. Fengdu's eyes flashed and he said, Araki Takashi's real body of the Qinglian has many opportunities. He cultivated 5 Grotto Heavens, which is unprecedented. He also cultivated the Prajna Nirvana Sutra and many other forbidden scriptures. Hearing the words Prajna Nirvana Sutra, the Lord of Hell's murderous aura burst out. He almost lost control. He narrowed his eyes and said, he cultivated the Seamless Sutra? Not only that, Fengdu said, to be precise, he is the only successor of the Seamless Emperor in the 3,000 realms. Not only does he have the Seamless Emperor's cultivation technique, but even the prison suppressing cauldron is in his hands. However, it was shattered during the War of the Heavens. Araki Takashi, the Qinglian of the creation. The Lord of Hell smirked and a bloody light flashed in the depths of his eyes. He said faintly, go back. 1,000 years later, I will help you establish the heavenly court and become the Lord of the heavens and earth. As for this Araki Takashi, I will end him with my own hands. Anyone who had anything to do with the Seamless Emperor had to die. Chapter 32:11. Time flew by like a shuttle. It had been more than 2,000 years since the War of the Heavens. 2,000 years, to the cultivators of various races, was like a fleeting moment. Ever since the War of the Heavens, the middle world had fallen into an unprecedented period of peace. There were no major wars or disturbances. In all the major domains, the beings of all races were recuperating. The vitality was rich, and opportunities were everywhere in the 3,000 domains. It was a scene of prosperity. The Heaven Domain. Before the War of the Heavens, the 3 corpses of the Lord of the Underworld used the Heaven Domain as a tomb to refine countless beings and experts. The Divine Builder Tree almost withered. Later, the Divine Builder Tree was rescued by the Blood Butterfly Emperor and brought to the Heaven Wasteland Domain. It took root there and was unwilling to leave. After the Heavenly Court was destroyed, there was an even thicker and more magical Divine Builder Tree in the Heavenly Court. After a discussion among the experts of the Heaven Wasteland Domain, it was planted in the Heaven Domain to replace the original Divine Builder Tree. It was considered an explanation to the Heaven Domain. It was also because of this that the Heaven Domain was able to recover quickly. On this day, the monks were travel-worn. They came to the Grand Taiwei Mountain and looked in the direction of the Pure Land. There was a vast and boundless deep sea. In the deep sea, they could faintly see a huge abyss. The surrounding seawater surged to that side and automatically bypassed it. The leading old monk had reached the peak of the Grotto Heaven realm. He pointed in the direction of the abyss and said to the young monks behind him, more than 2,000 years ago, there was a Taiwei mountain over there. However, when the War of the Heavens ended, the Taiwei mountain was razed to the ground by a heavenly punishment from the heavens, revealing the abyss of hell. The young monks behind him were young and had not experienced the War of the Heavens. They were full of curiosity about the past. "Master, why is it called the abyss of hell? Is it really connected to hell?" A young monk blinked and asked. The old monk smiled and said, "Back then, the Taiwei mountain was indeed connected to the Avicii hell. Legend has it that the deepest part of the Avicii hell was the Avicii hell, which could imprison the Lord of the heavenly court. It was created by the Avicii emperor of the Buddhist sect who sacrificed himself and used his flesh and blood." The Avicii emperor. Although the cultivation levels of these young monks were not high, they had heard of the legends of the great emperors. The era of the two emperors was only about 2,000 years ago, and the stories of Emperor Rocky Takashi and Emperor Shuedai were widely spread throughout the 3,000 worlds. Alas, a young monk sighed and said, "I heard that after great Emperor Araki Takashi successfully attacked the heavens, he perished under that heavenly punishment." That's right. Emperor Araki Takashi overthrew the heavenly court that had suppressed this medium-class world for several eras. He didn't die in the hands of the heavenly court's masters, but was killed by a mysterious divine punishment. It's really sigh. The other monk also sighed. A young novice monk seemed to have thought of something. His face was filled with grief and indignation. He clenched his fists and said, "Blood Butterfly Monarch was killed by Mother Ghost, who fought side by side with her. That's the most regrettable thing. Ghost Mother is abominable. She deserves 10,000 deaths." At the mention of this matter, the rest of the monks were indignant. The old monk looked up at the firmaments and could vaguely see the ruins of the heavenly courts through the clouds. He could not help but recall the War of the Heavens 2,000 years ago with a sorrowful expression. Although he did not participate in that earth-shaking battle back then, he was fortunate enough to witness it personally. The unprecedented era of the two emperors had ended just like that. Unknowingly, a faint black mist drifted over from the firmaments, blocking his vision. All of a sudden, a sinister wind blew out of nowhere, and the old monk could not help but shudder. The old monk frowned slightly. What a dense, sinister chi. Even with his cultivation, he could feel a chill from that sinister wind, and his hairs stood on end. With a grim expression, the old monk soared into the air and looked around. At the same time, he released his spirit consciousness and locked his gaze onto the abyss of hell in the depths of the sea. The abyss of hell was bottomless and nothing had happened for the past 2,000 years. At that moment, the old monk looked down from above at the abyss of hell from afar. He felt as though there were living beings within the abyss that were looking at him as well. A series of sinister auras surged out from the abyss of hell, as though something terrifying was being nurtured within. Something was wrong. The old monk's heart skipped a beat. Although he did not know what was going to happen in the abyss of hell, his instincts from his many years of cultivation told him that a calamity was about to descend. Without time to think, the old monk waved his wide monk robes and swept up the many monks beneath him. He tore through the void and wanted to leave this place. However, the moment the spatial tunnel appeared, it was destroyed by another tremendous power. The old monk's expression changed. Although the power earlier on was sinister and sinister, he could feel a chilling intent surging towards him even though it did not clash head-on. "I heard you guys bad-mouthing the Nirvana Ghost Mother behind her back loud and clear." Kik. A sinister laughter echoed from the vicinity of the Grand Taiwei Mountain. Apart from the old monk and the monks, there were many cultivators from the Nine Firmament Immortal Domain and Fiend region on the Grand Taiwei Mountain. When they heard that sinister laughter, the cultivators looked around with bewildered expressions. Swoosh! Suddenly, a menacing beast claw extended from the edge of the abyss of hell and slammed into the depths of the sea, creating torrential waves. Everyone looked over instinctively. A three-headed hound leaped out of the abyss of hell. Its entire body burned with scarlet flames, and the surrounding seawater began to boil. The hound of hell had sharp fangs and sticky saliva dripped from its mouth. It glared at the old monk and the other cultivators with a bloodthirsty gaze, as though it wanted to tear them into pieces. Life form of hell. The old monk recognized the origin of the hound of hell at a glance. In the War of the Heavens back then, many life forms of hell joined the battlefield. The life forms of hell were extremely ferocious. However, Emperor Araki Takashi was the lord of hell back then. Under the orders of Emperor Araki Takashi, the army of hell suppressed their nature and did not harm the life forms of the middle worlds. Instead, they attacked the army of the heavenly courts. Later on, Emperor Araki Takashi perished and the army of hell fell apart. Some chose to stay in Heaven Wasteland domain, while most chose to return to hell and disappear. That hound of hell was clearly from hell. Gradually, there was a violent tremor in the abyss of hell, as though thousands of soldiers and horses were galloping out. Before anyone could react, countless life forms of hell swarmed out from behind the hound of hell. They were murderous and opened their bloody mouths, pouncing towards the monks and cultivators on the Grand Taiwei Mountain. When the old monk saw that, he felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that the gates of hell had been opened. In this generation, without Emperor Araki Takashi, the life forms of hell were going to wreak havoc in the heavenly courts and even the middle worlds. Hurry and leave. The surrounding space could no longer be teleported. The old monk reassured the monks and urged them to escape towards the depths of the pure land of bliss while he stood in front of the life forms of hell. At the same time, the old monk tore a message talisman to warn the Buddhist sections. Chapter 32:12. You can't escape. All Buddhists deserve to die. The first voice sounded again. A man from the nether race with a strange rune between his brows appeared. His face was pale and his eyes were dark as he walked slowly towards the old monk. Boom! The old monk held up a grotto heaven. The man from the nether race smiled contemptuously and slapped in the direction of the old monk. A cold wind whistled and the old monk's grotto heaven instantly collapsed. An imperial emperor powerhouse. The gap between them was too big. The old monk could not even last a round before he was killed by the man from the nether race. Master! The young monks did not manage to escape in time. When they saw this scene, they could not help but cry out in grief. The nether race imperial emperor looked at the group of monks who were as weak as ants in his eyes. He had a contemptuous expression and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He asked condescendingly, "Who dares to repeat what you said about the Brahma ghost mother in front of me?" More and more hell creatures surged out like locusts. They had already occupied Taiwei Mountain and surrounded the group of young monks. As long as the nether race imperial emperor gave the order, the hell creatures would swarm over and devour them. In the face of such a situation and the pressure of an imperial emperor powerhouse, the group of young monks did not show much fear on their faces. A young novice monk who was only a mystic immortal stepped forward and said loudly, "The Brahma ghost mother is shameless. She deserves to die. Even if she is standing in front of me, I would still dare to say that." "That's right," another young monk said in a deep voice. "You hell creatures have invaded the heavenly realm. You will pay the price. We can't defeat you, but there will always be someone in the middle world to suppress you." The nether race imperial emperor raised his eyebrows. The surrounding hell creatures understood and swarmed forward, instantly devouring the group of young monks. Not even their corpses were left behind. Although the group of young monks had died and were so weak that they could not withstand a single blow, the Ming race imperial emperor felt that something was amiss. Back then, he had participated in the War of the Heavens. He had seen how the living beings of the middle world looked like after being enslaved by the heavenly court for several eras. The living beings of the middle world had long been enslaved and domesticated. Even though they knew the truth of the heavenly court enslaving all living beings, not many people dared to stand up and fight. Most of the kings and imperial emperors had lost their hot-bloodedness. 2,000 years later, the emperor of the nether race sensed a brand new spirit from these young monks. After 2,000 years, the middle world seemed to have undergone some changes. Of course, these thoughts merely flashed through his mind, and he didn't take them seriously. Countless creatures of hell crawled out of the abyss and charged toward the Nine Clouds immortal region, the pure land of bliss, and the demon region under the lead of the imperial emperors. This army of hell was like a black flood, sweeping in all directions at an astonishing speed, not only in the heaven realm, The ruins of the heavenly court in the vast starry sky also seemed to be changing. Dark clouds covered the sky and blocked the sun. Not only did they block the ruins of the heavenly court, but they also blocked the passage to the greater world. In the thick black clouds, a huge eye was faintly discernible. It was bloodshot, and its eyes were cold as it looked down on the 3,000 worlds. Heaven Wasteland Domain. Although the middle world had been in a peaceful period all these years, there were still some imperial emperors who faintly sensed a trace of danger. For example, Elder Taiguan, immortal King Ling Long, and the others knew that the crisis of the myriad races had yet to be resolved. A disaster that was enough to consign a medium-class world to eternal damnation would most likely erupt one day in the future. However, no one expected this day to come so soon. Ling Long, Feng Cantion, Yaksha King of Fear, and the others gathered in the Heaven Wasteland Palace with solemn expressions. They had already received news from the Heaven Realm. The Hell Realm had invaded the Heaven Realm and was on a killing spree. After 2,000 years, Ling Long had already stepped into the Emperor Realm. However, she looked more haggard and thinner than 2,000 years ago, and there was still a trace of sadness hidden in the depths of her eyes. Feng Cantion had also become a quasi-emperor. Yaksha King of Fear had taken another step forward and cultivated to the greater success stage of the Emperor Realm. For example, Kitsune, Night Spirit, Yin Beichen, Demonish Ji, and the others had also made breakthroughs in their cultivation. However, they had yet to touch the threshold of the Emperor Realm. It was just that in 2,000 years, there were not many imperial emperors in the Heaven Wasteland Domain. Most of them were from the Rakshasa race who came from the Nine Serenities' sinful grounds, and the Hell Realm beings who chose to stay in the Heaven Wasteland Domain, such as the Bitter Spring Hellmaster, Cold Spring Hellmaster, and the others. Feng Cantion said in a deep voice, "The Hell Realm has invaded on a large scale, and they are not friendly. I'm afraid the Heaven Realm won't be able to resist." Both Feng Cantion and Immortal King Ling Long had stayed in the Heaven Realm for hundreds of thousands of years, and had a special feeling for the Heaven Realm. It seems that our previous worries have become reality. This must be the work of the Lord of Hell. Elder Xin sighed. Why did this group of Hell Realm beings appear from the Heaven Realm without warning? Could it be that the Lord of Hell has already? Lin Lei frowned, wanting to say something but hesitating. Normally, there was a barrier between the Hell Realm and the Middle World, and only great emperors could break it. If the Hell Realm beings could break into the Middle World, it probably meant that the Lord of Hell had returned to his peak and become a great emperor. Not necessarily, Lin Xuanji said in a deep voice. Back then, the heavenly punishment razed the Taiwei mountain to the ground and chased Araki Takashi all the way. It pierced through the Avicii Hell and the Avicii Hell, and only then was the Lord of Hell released. That heavenly punishment probably also opened up the passage between the Middle World and the Hell Realm. Elder Xin said, even if the Lord of Hell hasn't become a great emperor, he shouldn't be too far off. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made his move at this moment. Everyone nodded. We have to save the Heaven Realm, Feng Cantion said in a deep voice, not only for the cultivators in the Heaven Realm, but also for ourselves. Everyone present knew that the Hell Realm was aggressive this time, and it was definitely not just to occupy the Heaven Realm. The Heaven Realm was only the first stronghold of the Hell Realm. With the Heaven Realm as the center, the Hell Realm would wage war everywhere and set off a bloody storm. The 3,000 domains would not be spared. Everyone had no objections to this and turned to look at Immortal King Ling Long. At this time, Immortal King Ling Long was the leader of the Heaven Wasteland Domain. Of course we have to save the Heaven Realm. Immortal King Ling Long nodded and said with a worried expression, I'm worried about something else. What is it? Everyone asked subconsciously. Immortal King Ling Long raised her head slightly and looked at the faint black clouds that were gradually spreading in the sky. She said in a serious voice, I'm afraid the Hell Realm's purpose is not just to take revenge on the Heaven Realm and start a war. Immortal King Ling Long faintly sensed that there seemed to be a pair of eyes in the depths of the ruins of the Heavenly Court, watching every move of the Heaven Wasteland Domain. And her gaze and divine sense seemed to be blocked by something and could no longer enter the range of the Heavenly Court. End of chapter. Chapter 32:13. Something seemed to be happening in the heavenly court. Ling Long, a mortal emperor, took a deep breath and sent a few message talismans to the sword domain, Great Wasteland domain, Dragon domain, Blood Ape domain, and other domains. After the War of the Heavens, these domains were already prepared to face the disaster that could befall them at any time. Ling Long, Immortal Emperor, led the Heaven Wasteland Domain's army of emperors and kings into the space tunnel and rushed towards the Heaven Domain. Old Xian and the others stayed behind to guard the Heaven Wasteland Domain. If they saw that the situation was not good, they would escort the Heaven Wasteland Domain to the land of inheritance left behind by the 9 Underworld Emperor to preserve their bloodline. Of course, this also meant that the entire Middle World was in a critical situation. This was the Heaven Wasteland Domain's last resort. In the space tunnel, everyone from the Heaven Wasteland Domain looked solemn. Everyone had already realized that many of them might never return from this trip. "Is there any news of Zimo?" Feng Cantian asked. Everyone looked at each other and shook their heads. All these years, Su Zimo seemed to have evaporated from the Middle World. There was no news of him, and not even a trace of him was left. Even if Ling Long, Immortal Emperor, and Lin Xuanji worked together to deduce, they could not deduce any information. Imo Qing said softly, "I hope he doesn't appear." Everyone understood what Imo Qing meant. The War of the Heavens had only been 2,000 years ago. It was too short for a Grotto Heaven Realm king. No matter how talented or fortunate Su Zimo was, there was no way he could enter the martial Emperor realm. The Heaven Domain. In less than a day, the flames of war had burned the entire Heaven Domain. Blood flowed like rivers and corpses were everywhere. Countless infernal realm beings rushed out of the abyss like locusts. Wherever they went, not even a blade of grass would grow. The Pure Lands were the first to fall. This group of hell creatures attacked the Pure Lands with the most ferocious attacks. Even though the Pure Lands had many Buddhist experts gathered together, they still couldn't defend against the tide of attacks. After the great emperors of the Buddhist League fell, the defensive line of the Buddhist League continued to crumble. Countless Buddhist monks perished. Large areas of the Pure Lands were reduced to ruins. The Demon Domain and the 9 Heavens Immortal Domain could not hold on for long. The people of Heaven Wasteland Domain arrived near the Heaven Realm. As soon as they came out of the space tunnel, there was a strong smell of blood that almost suffocated them. As far as the eye could see, a large expanse of blood mist was floating in the boundless starry sky. Countless severed limbs and shattered corpses were floating in the blood mist, and it was a horrifying sight. Some of the cultivators widened their eyes, and fear appeared on their faces. They died with their eyes wide open. Some of the cultivators still had warm blood flowing from their broken bodies. It was obvious that they had died not long ago. Even though the people of Heaven Wasteland Domain had experienced the War of the Heavens and were used to seeing life and death, they still felt a burst of shock when they saw this scene. Everyone broke through the blood mist and continued forward. Not long after, he saw the huge land of the Heaven Realm. The originally vibrant world had now been reduced to a purgatory. The huge Heaven Realm had already been occupied by densely packed hell creatures. Slaughter was everywhere, and the cries of all living beings reverberated in the sky above the Heaven Realm. Even the divine skywood tree had withered. The Heaven Realm had fallen. The faces of the people of Heaven Wasteland Domain turned ugly. The attacks of the Hell World were too ferocious. In less than a day, they had already conquered the Heaven Realm. Everywhere they passed, nothing was left. Amitabha. Ming Zhan put his palms together and lowered his head with a sorrowful expression. Seeing this scene, Zishuan Immortal King felt a lingering fear. After the War of the Heavens, under Yunju's persuasion, he moved the Zishuan Immortal Kingdom to Heaven Wasteland Domain. More than half of the cultivators chose to follow him. However, there were still some people who were unwilling to leave their homeland and chose to stay in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. At this time, these people had already become nameless corpses in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. If he had not listened to Yunju's advice, he would have been buried in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain with his Zishuan Immortal Kingdom. Immortal Emperor Ling Long, Imo Qing, Yunju, and the others looked at the Heaven Realm with complicated expressions. After all, they were born in the Heaven Realm. Seeing the heaven realm in such a state, they could not help but feel sad and regretful. The sadness in immortal Emperor Ling Long's eyes deepened. She and Lin Zhan had many memories of hundreds of thousands of years. They were all left in the heaven realm. At this moment, everything had turned into ruins. The people from back then were no longer here. The things in front of them had also disappeared. Save them! Feng Cantian shouted, and immediately charged towards the Hell's army below. Kill! The people of Heaven Wasteland Domain followed closely behind. Boom! A thick and dazzling bolt of lightning descended from the sky, smashing into the midst of the numerous infernal realm beings, blasting open a vast expanse of empty space. In an instant, at least a few hundred hell creatures died on the spot. A large spear that was flashing with lightning and entwined with thunder stabbed deeply into the ground. A huge force spread out, and the end of the spear was still vibrating. Frightening evil spear. The demon king of heaven's wrath is here. The people of the demon realm shouted. A glimmer of hope reappeared in their disheartened eyes. Feng Cantian descended from the sky. The attack just now did not make the other hell creatures afraid. Instead, it attracted the attention of even more hell experts. 2 quasi-emperors instantly descended, and 8 hell kings surrounded Feng Cantian. Feng Santian's gaze was like lightning. When one of the quasi-emperors met his gaze, he felt a piercing pain in his eyes and groaned. Fortunately, the held character between his brows flickered with a dim light, allowing him to regain his senses. However, this momentary lapse of consciousness was enough to take his life. By the time he reacted, a spear that was flashing with dazzling lightning was rapidly expanding in his eyes. It was already in front of him. Before the quasi-emperor of hell could even support his heavenly abode, Feng Santian's spear pierced through his brows and killed him on the spot. The other quasi-emperor of hell and 8 hell kings had already surrounded him. They supported their heavenly abodes and released their bloodlines. They exploded with fierce attacks and fought with Feng Cantian. Ming Zhan had just appeared, but before he could do anything, the hell creatures suddenly became extremely excited and charged in his direction. Destroy Buddhism. Erase all traces related to Buddhism, including living beings who cultivated Buddhism. This was the order of the Lord of Hell. The first hell creatures to charge forward were all blocked by Ming Zhan. Although he had just stepped into the heavenly abode realm, he had received the legacies of Ksitigarbha and Ananda, 2 Buddhist experts. His dharma was profound, and his battle strength far exceeded his peers. Even if he faced a peerless king, he still had the power to fight. However, more and more hell creatures charged toward Ming Zhan. No matter how profound Ming Zhan's dharma was and how strong his battle strength was, he could not hold them off alone. Noticing the danger Ming Zhan was in, the 7 demon generals, apart from the Yaksha king and the Heaven's Wrath Immortal king, Yin Beichen, Demoness Ji, and the zither and flute demons all rushed over to protect Ming Zhan. Yunju, Mo Qing, and the others descended on the battlefield of the 9 heavens immortal domain and tried their best to save as many immortal domain cultivators and innocent living beings as possible. The monkey, night spirit, tiger, Ching Ching, little fox, and the golden lion, the 6 great demon beasts, worked together and rampaged through the hell army, killing in all directions. On the other hand, the Heaven Wasteland Domain Emperors, such as the Yaksha King and the Ling Long Immortal King, were engaged in a fierce battle with the Hell Emperors. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.